Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, June 15th, 2021 at 9 a.m. We're starting a little bit late today. The Board of Supervisors welcomes you to its meetings, which are regularly scheduled for Tuesday at 9 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors chambers on the second floor of the Shasta County Administration Building, 1450 Court Street, Suite 263, Redding, California. Your interest is encouraged and appreciated. If the meeting is not concluded by 12 p.m. or somewhere in that area, the board may recess for 30 minutes and reconvene at 12:30. The agenda is divided into two sections: consent calendar. These matters include routine financial and administrative actions and are usually approved by a single majority vote. Then the regular calendar. These items include significant financial, policy, and administrative actions and are classified by program areas. The regular calendar also includes scheduled hearings, which are noticed, and public hearings, and any items not on the consent calendar. To address the Board of Supervisors provides the members of the public with a public comment open time period where the public may directly address the Board on any agenda item on the regular calendar and on the consent calendar, and may also address the Board on any matter not listed on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board of Supervisors. In addition, members of the public may also comment on any item on the consent calendar before the board's consideration of the consent calendar, and may also comment on any item of the regular calendar before or during the board's consideration of the item. Members of the public may also address matters scheduled for public hearings at the time such public hearings are opened for comment. Pursuant to the Brown Act, Government Code Section 54950 et seq., board action or discussion cannot be taken on non-agenda matters, but the board may briefly respond to the statements or questions and, if deemed necessary, refer the subject matter to the appropriate department for follow-up and/or to schedule the matter on a subsequent board agenda. Persons wishing to address the board in the boardroom are requested to fill out a speaker request form and provide it to the clerk before the meeting begins. Speaker request forms are available on the following locations online. I already did my Ron Burgundy last week, so anywhere on the board website. From the clerk of the board on the third floor of this courthouse, of this board chambers, Suite 308B, and in the back of the Board of Supervisors chambers, you can get them as well. If you have documents to present to the members of the Board of Supervisors to review, please provide a minimum of 10 copies. When addressing the board in the boardroom, please approach the rostrum, and after receiving recognition from the chair, give your comments. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to speak the comments, and they should be limited to board matters. Also, the board wishes to ensure that business is conducted in an orderly fashion and that all have an equal opportunity to observe and participate in the proceedings. Each person who addresses the Board of Supervisors shall not use loud, threatening, or profane or abusive language which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the board meeting. Any such language or any other disorderly conduct which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of this meeting is prohibited. And normally when someone does something like that, I will let them know right away that they have done that. So with that, I'm going to ask for a roll call just because there are people listening who may not actually be watching. So Stephanie, if you do a roll call, please.
Absolutely. Chair Committee?
Here.
Supervisor Modi?
Here.
Supervisor Rickert?
Here.
Supervisor Jones?
Here.
And Supervisor Baugh?
Here.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to ask us to rise. Is Pastor Rick Penner here from the Redding Christian Fellowship? Thank you, sir. If you'd lead us in prayer, and then Supervisor Jones.
Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed and revered be your name. On this 15th day of June, we give you thanks for the strides that are being made to minimize the restrictions that have been placed upon us by this awful pandemic. And even in this chamber, we thank you for the symbolic removal of a plexiglass. And we trust that that will be a symbol of the removal of barriers that have come upon our land due to polarization and shrill voices. We ask you for a return to normalcy, for civility, for respect, for charity, for freedom to express one's views, popular or not. We pray that that spirit will prevail in this chamber today. and that the items on the agenda that deal with health and human services and law and justice and the management of resources and the great concern that we all as citizens have for water and the lack of it, as these items and others are brought before us, we pray for that same gracious, loving, and charitable spirit to prevail here in all the conversations. And we're reminded of that prayer penned many centuries ago that seems so appropriate today, that stated, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me show love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it's in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord, in whose name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Supervisor?
Would you please join me in our pledge? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Why did they all?
Thank you, and thank you, Pastor, for those very kind and spiritual words. We appreciate that very much.
That was interesting.
Okay, we're going to go into R1 to start. We're going to adopt a proclamation which recognizes the 71st anniversary of the Korean War and the 31st anniversary of the Korean War Veterans Luncheon. And I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Modi, please.
Thank you, Chair Committee. The Shasta County Board of Supervisors proclamation. Whereas in memory of 54,246 American men and women who made the supreme sacrifice fighting for independence and freedom of the people in the Republic of Korea. And whereas in honor of the 103,284 Americans wounded, 7,140 Americans captured, and 8,177 Americans still missing. And whereas South Korean native Kim Chamberlain, a naturalized U.S. citizen residing in Shasta County since 1972, has advocated on behalf of all U.S. veterans, but most especially her beloved Korean War veterans. And whereas Kim Chamberlain has led the Korean American community of Shasta County to honor and recognize all Korean War veterans and their family members since 1990 at a luncheon. And whereas part of the mission of this commemoration is to provide residents of Shasta County and the surrounding region with a clearer understanding and appreciation of the self-sacrifice, honor, bravery, and call to service freely given by all members of this nation's armed forces. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Shasta County Board of Supervisors hereby recognizes the 71st anniversary of the Korean War on June 25th, 2021, and supports the efforts of Shasta County's Korean American community in honoring all Korean War veterans on June 19th, 2021 during the 31st Thank You Luncheon held at the Anderson VFW Post in the city of Anderson, County of Shasta, State of California, in the United States of America. Signed by our chair, Joe Comenti, June 15th, 2021. I'll move approval.
So we have a motion from Supervisor Modi, a second from Supervisor Bott. Any further discussion? And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And I will call up Derek. That's how he recognized himself to me.
Thank you. This will not be an anti-war rant. I completely understand that war is a necessary evil in order to combat tyranny and oppression and preserve our way of life. One day, when human beings are kinder and more tolerant of each other, that will change. My grandfather knew this as a veteran serving twice, including during Korea, and is currently occupying a space in the Northern California Veterans Cemetery, and I go and see him every time I chance, and I get. He's a great man, a loving father and grandfather, and he's the person that I learned to respect and honor our armed forces for. But a tough pill that we need to swallow is that we need to be better than our ancestors. Respect them, yes. Honor them, absolutely. But we must be better than them and those that came before us, or else we will be no better than them. As a railroad town, we've historically kept our Irish far and our Asians farther. We'd get the good old boys liquored up, offer $5 a scalp, and point them in the next wind-to direction. Or how about the litany of heinous crimes, with no substantial investigative follow-up committed towards the men and women of this community of any race, religion, or creed that isn't white, conservative, or Christian? Shasta County has had its own history of racism, and I was actually surprised but not shocked to learn that we had a KKK march here in the 70s. And I'd like to think that we are better now than we were back then. But unfortunately, we have members of this community who you give platform to, calling a black veteran a classless monkey, calling immigrant farmers trimmigrants, and pointing the blame of societal issues at Hmong's, Russians, Mexicans. And that's just the rated PG, tip of the iceberg. So we as a community need to be better. We should not and cannot give hate, ignorance, and divisiveness an equal platform to love, acceptance, and logical reason, or else we will start to erode and lose the freedoms our forefathers fought so hard to protect. And we need to start mending the bonds of community that fear, prejudice, and bias have tarnished. So it is that reason why I'm asking you not only to recognize the Korean War itself, but all of the Korean War refugees and Korean immigrants in our society, in our county, who are our American brothers and sisters of this community. Their accomplishments choosing freedom over oppression by continuing the American dream. And I hope that for all future war anniversary proclamations, we will be equally as accepting, promoting, and just accepting of all immigrants and refugees. Okay? Thank you.
Chair, do you have any other speakers?
No.
You want to call Kim Chamberlain?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So at this time, I'd like to ask Kim Chamberlain and the other people representing the Korean War to come forward, please. Some of our Korean War vets.
Thank you all for your service. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you so much. I would like to thank the Shasta County Board of Supervisors to making this special presentation for our honored Korean War veterans. As Supervisor Leonard Mori had read, I reside in Shasta County since 1972. And I was married to Korean War veterans, and sadly, I lost him 2007. But I come to learn the Korean War veterans were forgotten war veterans. And that deeply disturbed me. And in 1990, the first year, helped with the Anderson Chamber of Commerce and the business people from the Anderson helped me and supported for me to honor Korean War veteran the first time in Anderson River Park. That time, Korean War veterans, several Korean War veterans who attended, they cry and crying big tears that really gratify me and move my heart to have that chance to honor them. So after that, we continue. I knock on a lot of business people's door to help aids and funds to continue honoring our Korean War veterans. Well, now Korean population has grown in Shasta County. So past 15 years, I get some help through the Korean community and a Korean Consul General from San Francisco. So we are able to continue to honor our Korean War veterans. I want to share a little bit about myself. I was a little girl. I went through the Korean War. So we become a refuge overnight. And so therefore, American soldiers who came to save our land and our lives are heroes. And I can never thank you enough for their sacrifice. Only they could tell you how harsh climate in South Korea at that time. During the winter time, our temperature dropped down to 40 below zeros. During the summer heat, our humidity is equal to temperature itself. So it's a very hardship on our American soldier and the UN soldier who came to save South Korea. Today, South Korea is a thriving, prospered, and in American freeway and the roadside, you will see the made by Korea, the vehicles such as Kia, Honda, Hyundai, and every American home, they have some sort of electronic device made from South Korea, such as Samsung, LG, and a lot of the products. And they are very good products. Without our Korean War veteran who sacrificed to save Korea, we won't have that. And I would not have this good life in America. I just so appreciated. I am a veteran advocate. I'm not only to honor Korean War veteran, but they are a little bit more special to me. I've been working with our veterans in Vietnam, World War II, the freedom in Iraq, and all the veterans. I am advocating for there. And on a long, long time that I have a good working relationship with the Shasta County supervisors, because we have a wonderful veteran service office, because due to our veterans advocating for our veteran service office to help our veterans. And I want to really recognize Korean War veteran as a 70-year anniversary last year. But due to COVID, everything was shut down. And 71 years, here we are. In 10 days, we would have a 71-year anniversary. But as you see, we had a lot of Korean War veterans who was hero to help bring veterans home, veterans clinic, which we are just about in a few months to open up in Knighton Row, one of the 10 largest medical clinics. Our active Korean War veterans, World War II veterans, and Vietnam War veterans working together to aid our veterans. But I want especially to applaud our Korean War veterans. A lot of heroes have passed, and we have few still alive and working hard to improve other veterans' lives. I thank you so much and appreciate this opportunity. And we are having Korean War Veterans 31st luncheon this coming Saturday, June 19. You are welcome to come and mingle with our veterans and eat some awesome food. Thank you so very much. I'd like to add one more thing. A lot of time, my veterans in need, I call our Leonard Modi, our supervisor, because he is a Veterans Council, and he come through most of the time my request. And thank you, Leonard. Appreciate it so much.
Most of my Korean War veteran group and the people in Reading know I talk a lot, but I'm not going to take a lot of time. We just, as the Korean War veterans, and I'm going to cry, we appreciate Kim so much. You do not know what it's like to have a person like her that comes to Reading and cares about our organization and the fact we were Korean War veterans and how much she has given to us and been there for us and loved us. And we equally love you so terribly much and appreciate all you have done for us, all the love you have given us, and I don't know what we'd have done without you. So thank you for letting me talk today.
So just, Kim has pretty much said all needs to be said, but on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, it's my pleasure to recognize you and all of our Korean War veterans. We hope that your event on Saturday goes well. Thank you for the chance for us to recognize your service to our country.
And I'd like to add, if any of our veterans would like to step up to the mic and say a few words, they would be more than welcome to do that.
Supervisor Committee? Yes,
What?
I would just like to say I have a very dear friend that served in the Korean War, and one evening he spent about an hour going through what the ordeal that he did. He was an officer. He was a graduate of Stanford. He was an officer, and his story was incredibly touching, and it was deeply moving to know how much pain and suffering these Korean veterans went through. So I just know personally from a dear friend who was a Korean War veteran, it is the war that never really gets recognized enough. So thank you. And Kim also was my mother-in-law's hairdresser. She didn't add that she's a great hairdresser too.
Thank you, Supervisor. Go ahead, sir.
Well, my name is Frank Rose, and I am the historian for our Korean chapter. And I interface with Kim many, many times about many things. And another thing she has done has worked with us at the Veterans Home and honoring the veterans, Korean veterans that are there. And there's approximately 26 of them, male and female, Korean veterans. And our chapter gives a coffee and donuts about twice a year. Korean veterans there first, and then the rest of the people who want to eat donuts and have coffee, they're next. Also, she also started Wreaths Across America here at the cemetery. So she's also part of the community and the support committee for not only the support committee for the Veterans Home, she's also part of the support committee for the cemetery. So she has done many, many things to help veterans here in Shasta County. And she has been our champion on issues that come up, and she'll email you and say, hey, how about this? How about that? So she is definitely a fighter and a champion, and we're very, very proud to have a Korean citizen and American citizen as well. God bless her.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Any other veterans like to speak? Please, you're more than welcome to the mic if you'd like. We'd love to hear from you.
Obviously, I'm not a Korean veteran. I am a veteran. But on behalf of the veterans of this community, thank you, Kim, for everything you've done.
Anyone else Well, thank you sincerely for everything that you've done and you continue to do in our community. You are greatly respected and appreciated. Thank you very much. And Supervisor Baugh, would you like to add something?
Thank you, Chair Committee. I'll just add to that also, Kim is not only a treasure to the city of Anderson, but to the entire county and the North State. I just have, everywhere you go, if it's honoring veterans, our Kim is there. God bless you, Kim.
Thank you. How about one more round of applause? Thank you. Okay, I will now open public comment, and we will start with Kathy Grindstaff. So you may step up, please. And Stephanie, please make sure the clock is working. Thank you.
Supervisors, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kathy Grindstaff. I am speaking before you on behalf of those members of the community who are being intimidated and harassed by illegal pot growers. We are here to remind you that you all represent us and should be taking actions that keep us all safe and healthy. By continuing to ignore and not addressing the issue of illegal pot grows, you are only putting us in danger, reducing our ability to enjoy our property, normalizing a federally illegal drug, which our youth will tell you is easier to obtain than alcohol, and the scariest part, reducing our water levels to such a degree that should we be hit by another dangerous fire season, we will not be able to fight the flames. Many of you were not directly affected by the Carr fire, but you most certainly represent those that were. You should be taking all actions to stop the illegal grows and water diversion in our county. Creeks are dry, our water tables are reduced, and now you want to penalize us for excess water use? Shame on you. You must address this issue now. Find those that are taking our water, diverting our streams, and causing detrimental environmental impacts. Shame on you for putting this issue off till it is convenient for you. Waiting till July, you could potentially be wasting 350 million gallons of water. Waiting to address this issue harms our county to a degree that your citizens will be bone dry. Gardens and livestock lost, potential fires with no way to fight them, and illegal grows continuing to thrive unabated. You have the ability to rewrite this ordinance to include language that finds those participating in illegal grows. This is an illegal activity and needs to be addressed now, not 2 months down the road. Instruct your staff to reach out to water districts in your county and ask for their input and ideas. They will tell you that the greatest use and abuse of water is the illegal grows. They are put on the spot to tell their members that their water use is being reduced to only 25%, and yet grows continue to thrive. Shame on you. But the most important issue, as well as water, is hiring a sheriff that will actually enforce our current ordinance and abate these illegal grows. We can write complaints every day, but code enforcement will not visit these sites without law enforcement. You need to start enforcing these rules now and save our community. It is all of our responsibility to adopt and make changes for our community that will bring a better life for our youth and everyone who resides here. Penalizing citizens for growing gardens that feed their families and livestock is not the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Joe Dux.
Good morning, Board. Marijuana mayhem continues unabated. Fender's Ferry illegal marijuana grows multiple. Allegations criminal. Preventing free movement. Exhibition of firearms in a rude and threatening manner. Terrorist threats. Illegal cultivation of marijuana and theft of water. In May, a citizen was referred to us with an illegal marijuana grow complaint. The reliable informant said that a number of second-generation Hmong had moved into the area from Castro Valley and had purchased several homes in the 28,000 block of Fender's Ferry Road. Every home immediately started growing illegal marijuana. The growers put tall fences around these locations and blocked the driveways with gates or vehicles. Neighbors allege that the growers are also growing poppy, used in heroin production. The informant said that all the deer were gone from the environment and that the Hmong had illegally poached all of them out of existence. Residents report rapid fire or fully automatic gunfire at night from areas surrounding the cartel grow sites. Within the last 60 days, there have been 2 dangerous incidents involving the Hmong growers. The first incident, a UPS driver delivered a package to a home where the Hmong were living and was threatened by the armed cartel growers. UPS is considering rescinding deliveries to the area. In the second incident, around the same time frame, a newspaper delivery driver was on his route in the 28,000 block of Fenders Ferry Road in the early morning hours, finding the public county roadway blocked by vehicles. The newspaper driver stated he was approached by a number of armed individuals, stated and identified as Hmong growers, and was questioned what he was doing. The driver stated he was delivering newspapers and was allowed to pass. Upon his return, the same group stopped him again and ordered him not to come back. Net result, the newspaper is no longer delivered to the Fenders Ferry area. Water for the grows is being delivered by several pickup trucks outfitted with small water tanks. Water is being stolen from the creek, and there are also reports of personal water tanks on citizens' parcels being drained overnight by the growers. As an example for perspective, Bella Vista Water District has the capacity to deliver 52 million gallons of water per day in a stage 3 water crisis, while unaffected cartel growers burn up to 10 million gallons a day with zero consequences. The continued inability to deal with the cartel by this board, the obstructive behavior by county council, the sheriff, and the district attorney have left citizens less safe, less trusting of government, and less willing to be cooperative witnesses. We have asked every one of you on a fact-finding tour, but in reality, one only needs to look at the county GIS parcel viewer to get a glimpse of what is occurring. The sheriff had this complaint and never even had the courtesy of contacting the citizen informant. Action items. 1, please add language to the emergency water ordinance prohibiting water use or delivery for any illegal activity. 2, please add 2 code enforcement officers to the grow code violations. 3, fund a MET team immediately. Water, not weed. Thank you, board.
Thank you. The next speaker is Derek. Go ahead, sir.
All right, let me read you something right off the homepage of the co.shasta.ca website. Welcome to Shasta County, our community. Not the Supervisors County, not the Conservatives County, not the Cowboys County. We don't all live on a ranchette. But our county, our community, all of us, no matter political affiliation, race, or religion, it is our county and our community. Another quote from the homepage. Shasta County meets the needs of our community through collaborative services provided with courteous, efficient professionalism while ensuring public trust. For the last, we don't even know how long, our nation has been under siege online with misinformation campaigns, sowing lies and mistrust disguised as news articles, comedic pictures, and more commonly as misguided comments. This disinformation attack against our nation recently culminated on the January 6th with an insurrection, but not before creating a microcosm right here in Shasta County, where a group of misinformed bullies and thugs preaching terror were led by 2 supposed community leaders who disregarded logic, reason, and patience. Those same community leaders sit before you today, feigning collaboration while only pushing their agenda, disguising smear campaigns as courteous professionalism, only being efficient to self-serve, and driving a wedge of public mistrust through the heart of this community. Recall Shasta might try and have an honest hard shell, but their supporters' personal online personas create a soft center full of thinly veiled, racist, homegrown terroristic threats. And you bet dark money is coming through the RW and BP as their marketing director advertises their efforts to Sacramento, the OC, LA, Nevada, and probably Zapata's ex-Florida strip club, and anywhere else they can, quote, monetize their channel with the ongoing support of these 2 fine gentlemen. So, Supervisor Lesbaugh, I'm going to offer you and Supervisor Patrick Jones the generous olive branch you extended your colleague across the way, for failing to meet the minimum needs of this community, for furthering a divisive platform for potential monetary, political, social, or personal gain, and for giving pure ignorance, debased realities, and unadulterated hate an equal platform to logical, reality-driven, community-minded citizens. I hereby publicly call for your recalls. You are both unfit for civil office, and if you are so adamant a recall should happen, I will add both your names to the list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mark Mack.
Good morning, Supervisors.
Good morning.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. First off, Supervisor Modi, sir, relax. I'm not going after you this morning. You could be at ease. Supervisor Rickert, last week during the commentary on the R3 agenda, I was very disturbed. The very restrictions and guidelines that I have to abide by not being loud, disruptive, and using profanity, you just blatantly disregarded. I have a serious problem with that, in that it is shows of hypocrisy. And ma'am, I'm imploring you to act professionally. I think it's ironic that Supervisor Modi was able to disagree with Supervisor Ba, but he did it in a very professional manner. Supervisor Modi, thank you for that, sir. I think you're misunderstanding the difference between the word unity and the word uniformity. Uniformity means that we have to act together, talk together, walk together, look alike. There's no room for disagreement, and any dissension will be shouted down and suppressed. Unity, however, on the other hand, means that I can be your opponent but still treat you with respect. Let me give you an example. Chairman Clementi, you and I have never met personally, as far as I know. There are many things that I don't agree with you, sir, and there's many things that I say that you don't agree with. I don't like the way you vote, but I do recognize that the position you hold is a difficult one. I do like to say that you treat everyone from this microphone with respect and with dignity, and you act professionally, and sir, I'd like to thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
That is a somewhat example of what I'm trying to say, Supervisor Rickert. I'm wondering if the position that you're holding, I believe that chair demands that you act professionally. It doesn't ask. It demands that you be respectful to your opponents and to those that support you. I'm wondering if that position has gotten too much. That's a tough job that you have. All of you have a very tough job. I would not want that job. I would rather face a raging forest fire with a broken fire engine holding a leaky fire hose wearing a backpack full of angry cats than to sit in that chair. But if I did sit in that chair, God forbid, I would try to act with dignity and respect. I believe that you owe all of us an apology. You owe Supervisor Ba apology. And I am going to make a motion of censure for what your actions. I don't know, Chairman Clementi, if that can be done here. Sir, if you could educate me or direct me on how that can be done, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just like to make a comment about language. It gets very emotional for everybody. And I, as a chair, as an emotional person, can appreciate that. But I will uniformly and consistently, if language or action is inappropriate, address it. I do so with people who speak there. I did so immediately when Supervisor Rickert made the comment that she made. And I want to ask all of us, to try to be as professional as we possibly can, as respectful as we possibly can, despite our difference of opinions. And obviously we have some very serious differences of opinion, but that's what makes this country great, is the ability for us to engage in those differences and still do so in a professional manner. So we will continue to do that, and I will continue to ask all of you, including everyone on this board, to try to behave as professional as we can in a very emotional and sometimes stressful situation. So with that, I'm going to call up the next speaker, Monique Wheeline, please.
Good to see you. Good morning, Board. Hello, fellow constituents. For almost 5 years, I've been coming up here every single Tuesday, fighting for underserved, unsheltered individuals who have mental health issues. And I've had this book ever since 2012, when I used to teach at SRMC, Pediatric Advanced Life Support and Cardiac Advanced Life Support. And this book has helped me get through a lot, so I'm going to quote it. Unless we share with others what God has given us, it may not be long before we begin to slip away and fall back into the darkness. It is our job to acknowledge our weakness, to accept the help, and to teach others what God teaches us. Or we become like the Dead Sea, which constantly receives fresh, living water, but never gives it out. We become lifeless and useless to all around. Often, we would prefer to ignore the painful areas of our lives. We want to forget about our problems, but God does not want us to simply stop making a mess of our lives. He receives the glory when we let Him turn the very mess He pulled us from into a message we can use to reach others trapped in similar circumstances. A ministry to those who are suffering the same things we have been through may be painful at first, but if we submit to God and teach others what He has taught us, we will find a satisfaction in ministry we had not dreamed possible. We must not wait until we are strong enough to start. We need to start. So my point in reading this little ditty is every time I come up here, I see the children come up and speak, and it makes my heart feel whole. Our next generation is getting the best education possible about political science. And I love seeing children come in here and speak articulately from their hearts and sound incredible. And it just to some degree breaks my heart that as a board, you guys really are indifferent to your constituents. You're indifferent to your citizens. You're indifferent to the children fighting for the hope of the future. They're not here because the last time I was at City Council, there were children speaking at the boards, which made me proud and sad at the same moment, because they were speaking to mass school shootings. That was something that had been done that brought these children to the board to fight. But these children here are speaking in hopes of our future. And I love the fact that they come up and speak their piece. And I think mad respect should be given. So all the time when I come up here, I truly want to empower the individual to understand that I aspire to inspire before I expire. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Walker, please.
We are still awaiting regular BOS evening meetings where the public may speak both to agenda items and whatever they are concerned about that is not on the agenda. The last time we asked for this type of meeting, you assured us that an evening meeting was in the works and would happen soon. It turns out that that evening meeting was not a regular meeting. It only had one agenda item, and general public comment was not allowed. This was not the kind of meeting we requested, and you were well aware of it. This was yet another attempt to squelch public speech. We expect this board to schedule regular evening meetings this summer. Moving on. Last week, Supervisor Rickard accused Supervisor Baugh of dividing this county. The world was already divided long before these supervisors ever came on the scene. There has been a long war raging between Satan and God that started back in the Garden of Eden when sin entered this world. It's not something new. There are two sides of this war. Either you're for God or you're against him. There is no other choice. God divides. He divides darkness from light, the righteous from the unrighteous. Jesus came to divide father against son, mother against daughter, and the sheep from the goats. Last week, 3 of you voted to adopt a proclamation that celebrates the LGBTQ lifestyle, which is abominable in God's eyes. 2 of these 3 supervisors identify as devout Catholics. Simply claiming to be religious doesn't make you right with God. Jesus said, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name do many wonderful works?' The Lord will reply, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity.'" Those are frightening words to hear. We should all examine ourselves and ask, am I right with God? The only way to be right with God is for each of us to repent, admit our sinfulness in need of a Savior, and put our faith solely in the Lord Jesus Christ and his completed work on the cross, who alone paid the punishment for our sin and rose from the grave victorious. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." The Lord responded to Pharaoh, "How long will you refuse to humble yourselves before me? Let my people go." The Lord gave Pharaoh multiple opportunities to change his mind and hearken to the voice of God. But Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he refused to obey God. As a result, God dealt with him by laying waste the food supply of the land, taking the life of his firstborn son and ultimately destroying Pharaoh and the entire Egyptian army. God is patient with us, but he also has a limit. It's better to turn to the Lord now while we have time. God loves each individual no matter what they have done. He's not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. My prayer for you is that you will personally examine your own hearts and turn to Christ.
Thank you. Brenda Woods, please. Brenda. I don't see Brenda in the audience today, so we'll hold her card in case she returns. Okay, the next speaker is Mary Tyler Moore. That's what the card says. So can you turn the world on with a smile?
I didn't think you'd give me the whole name. Thank you. She's kind of a hero of mine, heroine, because she worked with some dysfunctional people in her life, and she still was an awesome person. So anyway, I'm Lori Bridgeford. I'm in District 4. I also would like to know where the plexiglass is originally from this podium, and I'm glad to see it's being taken down and that we are regaining pre-COVID status once again. I'm also dittoing what Rebecca said about where's the evening meeting. We will be at least a year waiting. That's unacceptable to find something when the City Council can do it all the time in the evening. I have a small update regarding Nathan Eugene Pinckney. I connected with his attorney, Lisa Jensen, yesterday, and I was told that he will bring down every slanderous video that he has on YouTube and Facebook. And I will double check to make sure he will actually do that, because why? I don't have complete trust. So that's a plus. So if you've been targeted by Mr. Pinckney, like myself, I have the information with Lisa Jensen, and please reclaim your power back. You do not have to be victimized by people like this. Get your justice. Of course, I got no apology. I don't expect one. So I'd like to thank Lisa Jensen, and I'd also like to thank Monique, because she offered to be a witness if things went sideways or weren't going in the right direction. So thank you, Monique. Regarding the media briefings that have been dropped, last week was the last one, and we were left with us hanging in the red tier. There's an option that Richard and I will probably put together, and that is we'll be asking in email form questions to the COVID team, and then we will publish their answer, and we'll also go through it and give it a little bit more dialogue. So it did not vanish. It did not go away. I have a vital question. Today, they're having the RPD versus firefighters blood drive. And I have a vital question. Who and what screening will be done to check this donated blood that it won't be tainted by the synthetic mRNA, spike protein, GMO-making human? I don't want that kind of blood or organs, and I don't think anyone knows how to verify that. What's going to happen when all these other vaccines follow? No one knows. Nobody knows once they take this vaccine how it's going to interact with any other shot down the pipeline. So I think every intake health form should have this question if they've taken Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson, or whatever they took. That's part of a solid medical history. Karen Ramstrom, DO, what have you been told by the CDC about taking other vaccines? I would like to know. Basically, last week in her media briefing, she left it as that they're desperate. Her words, desperate to get these shots in the arms of people. Well, the casino's giving $100 free slot money, and Las Vegas will give at the Larry Flint Hustlers Club a free lap dance. Really, this is where we're at, folks. 2021. How good is your shot if you have to have a flipping lap dance?
Thank
and there,
you.
my time's up.
Thank you.
I have a lot more to say, and I'll be back, as always.
Thank you.
Lovely day.
Next speaker is Benjamin Nowain, please.
These are for you.
So we're going to talk about Patrick a little bit today. Patrick, first of all, why do you insist on consistently lying? On the Red, White, and Blueprint podcast last week, you stated that the grand jury found Leonard Modi guilty, but they didn't. The grand jury implicitly stated what Modi did wasn't illegal. They found no laws were broken. You argue that the grand jury lack any kind of teeth simply because they didn't rule on malfeasance like you wanted. But the facts don't support your assertions. I implore anyone to read the grand jury report. It was a fair, just, and impartial decision. I think the only reason we're speaking about this 3 years later is because you need a scandal to prove that you are the guy to come in and fix it. Your whole career is predicated on accusing an organization of impropriety, then coming to the rescue. Well, we know better. You might have some fans in here, but the people of Shasta County know better. I actually find it kind of funny that you take offense to calling this room a circus, because that's what it is. You caused this. You have weaponized the people in this town for your own political gain, and it's painstakingly obvious. These movements are not grassroots. And I believe the investigations against these recall groups will show that you were involved as more than just an outside supporter. You are a dishonest person with dishonest motives. I suspect that any office you end up in, you will find acts of propriety to report. You think of yourself as a whistleblower, but you are the boy who cried corruption. You actually make the job harder to root out corruption, because now we all have to ask, what does the whistleblower have to gain? I find it concerning that you are elected for a job that you consistently complain about doing. Reading a 600-page document in 10 days is not unreasonable. It's your job. And without reading it, you complain about the 5.35% increase in this year's budget while not understanding how we got here. How does it help the citizens, Patrick? Well, I get that you haven't been here long, but these things undergo rigorous audits prior to being brought to the board. The increase is what we need to operate our programs. At Shasta County, I suspect they operate by doing the math, not by Patrick's gut feeling.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jenny.
Good morning, beautiful supervisors. I'm not going to do my normal rhetoric, or actually, I guess I'm going to go back to my normal rhetoric before all this. I was approached by Western service workers to talk about some of our homeless problems, and in particular, preventing homeless problems. See, in Shasta County, we have two things going on. In Keswick, some of the fire victims were never able to rebuild. And in Reading, we have gentrification problems, which are buying up what used to be affordable housing and renting them out for expenses that people just can't afford. Apartments that were $550 are now going up to $1,200. And a lot of us just can't afford that kind of stuff. My husband and I are doing fine, but a lot of people I'm talking to aren't, especially after COVID. So I am asking that we hold a meeting to specifically talk about these problems. I know that the city has to talk about some of them too, that gentrification is more of a city thing, but I'm hoping that the county and city can work together. There are ordinances that exist in other cities and counties that can be passed here that can prevent gentrification to the point. Gentrification hits a point where your original population is pushed out because they can't afford it. It's happened all over the country, and I'd hate to have people born and raised here not able to live here. And it doesn't just affect Reading. If people are pushed out of Reading, it affects the land prices in Bernie, in Fall River, in Montgomery Creek. It's kind of an everybody problem. So I hope everybody works together to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Kenneth Michaud.
Ken Michaud, I live in Cottonwood. At the previous board meeting, 3 members of the board, as part of the discussion of the LGBTQ+ proclamation, expressed their commitment to supporting the rights of all the people of Shasta County. It was further stated that none of the members of the board initiated the placing of the proclamation on the agenda, but rather the LGBTQ community came to you and their request was honored. The proclamation was presented, discussed, and voted on. Last week, I came before the board asking that a letter supporting the Second Amendment rights of all the people of Shasta County be placed on the agenda for discussion and a vote. But I see that that request has not been honored. I don't see anything on today's agenda. I'm again asking the chair, with the support of the board, to place on the agenda consideration of a letter asking Governor Gavin Newsom and Attorney General Robert Bonta to refrain from filing an appeal of the June 4th ruling in the case Miller versus Bonta, which struck down the AWCA semi-automatic firearm ban. I'm not even asking you to agree with the substance or the sentiment of the letter, which simply advocates for the right of Californians to own semi-automatic firearms. 3 members of the board didn't let their personal reservations about LGBTQ behavior prevent them from discussing and voting on an LGBTQ proclamation. Kindly extend the same courtesy and respect to the gun owners of Shasta County. You say you support the Second Amendment. Take this opportunity to show it and get in sync with your constituents.
Thank you. Next speaker is Freedom.
Good morning, Board.
Morning.
First, I'd like to go ahead and say a little prayer for you. Dear Lord, I come to you lifting up our Board of Supervisors. I pray that you will develop in them all of the skills and qualities needed to lead our county. I pray that they will have the leadership skills of Moses, the bravery and vision of David, the wisdom of Solomon, the patience of Job, and the perseverance of Paul. I pray that they will ask for and receive good advice, as it says in Proverbs, a wise man listens to advice. Proverbs 12:15, and many advisors make victory sure. Proverbs 11:14. I ask that you grant our supervisors a good understanding of the problems and fixes for our county and business issues. Give them a good view and an overall picture and a solid business plan for the business of present and future. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. I'd like to also ask that you put onto your agenda that we get an evening meeting. I know this is, again, something that has been asked of you time and time again. The majority of your constituents work a 9 to 5, and that's just being very small on the times that people are having to work, that cannot be here, that do have serious concerns of what is happening with our county. I also would like to find out how a forensic audit of Shasta County of past funds, past pay that has been approved by the Good Old Boy Club, of the amount of money that is paid to past government officials, to have it looked at and seen if it is actually due diligence what they have been offered and paid in the past. I also have a few more of the things that have to come before you. I know I don't have enough time right now. But just as far as like C3, the investigating services for elder abuse, does this come out of the budget that you were just allocating last meeting, or is this going to be on top of that? I'm not saying that it's not important to check on elder abuse, even child abuse, but where are the funds going to be coming from? I'm very disappointed, honestly, in 4 of you in approving a bigger budget than last year. Stop allowing it to go up. Learn to live within your means like the rest of your constituents must. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Carolyn Gomez.
Good morning. First, it's actually Carolyn Gums, but
I'm sorry.
I get that a lot. It's
yeah,
okay.
I had one way or the other, and I went with Gomez.
Yeah, that's
Apologies.
okay. So I just wanted to say that I have been a lifelong resident of Shasta County. My dad was in public service my whole childhood. He was a firefighter for the city of Reading. And I've always loved where I live. I love coming to the supervisor meetings. I love that you would consider opening them up for an evening as well. But what I'd like to address this morning is I love my country, I love the community, I love the United States, and I'm a patriot. So this morning I observed you, Mr. Clemente, when it was time to salute the flag, I was aware that you actually saluted the state flag and not the American flag. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to see if you were aware that you did that.
I was not aware,
Okay.
and I apologize. And I
Thank
certainly
you.
salute the American flag
Okay.
with my entire life.
Okay, I just wanted to publicly give you the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just say sometimes in the seat there's a lot going on and I get disoriented. That's on me. But I respect this flag very much. So I apologize to anyone who saw my back. Please do not take it as a disrespect. I respect the flag very much. And I apologize that that happened. Sometimes it gets a little disoriented. Anyway, with that, I'm going to ask Steve Woodrum to come up, please. Speak. It's usually over here. I thought so.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Steve Woodrum.
Morning.
Now, about a month ago, after one of these meetings, out on the patio there, a person came up and criticized me because I used the word democracy during my remarks. He said that we have a republic and that democracy is merely mob rule. I've heard this many times before. I think it's inaccurate and essentially it's a slander on our form of government. Our nation conducts elections following the rules of both our national and state constitutions. The winners of those elections are given limited political power for a limited period of time. This method works from the Board of Supervisors all the way up to the presidency. The final source of political power in this country is the votes of the people. We, the people, give power to these individuals. And that's basically a definition of democracy. We, the people, are the essential final control of the political system. Now, we have a large and very complex country, and we can't all get together to hash out every decision every time we have to do something. So we elect representatives to make those decisions on our behalf. On the national level, this form of representative democracy takes a special name, republic, but it's still a democracy. Just like a German Shepherd is a kind of a dog, republic is a kind of democracy. But in California, we have a special form of direct democracy, and we use it regularly. Do you remember Proposition 13 that limited the ability of governments to raise taxes? Somebody came up with an idea. He got signatures. He put it on the ballot, and we voted, and it passed. In this state, we, the people, can directly make laws. We can bypass Sacramento and make laws themselves. That's direct democracy, and we have both direct democracy and representative democracy in this country. Now, if you still think democracy represents mob rule, well, I'm sorry. You can look around, see the world. Think of North Korea. That's the extreme example of where we don't have any democracy or will of the people. So if you just think around, we have it pretty good here. Don't slander the kind of government we have.
Thank you. Next speaker is Melody Fowler. I'm assuming, Melody, you wanted to be in public comment, correct?
Yes, good morning, Board.
Good morning.
I'm addressing public comment and the inconsistencies that I've experienced the last year. I had some other commitments today, and I saw that there was no voicemail. I couldn't leave a message, and so I drove up, to Reading from Policy Dro to make this comment. Consistency, I know that it's very important in leadership. And it just seems like we've been on a yo-yo since May 19th, 2020, when Mrs. Rickert claimed that a 3-minute speech could not be read because it was inequitable, that the general population was not represented and it was just us that, bravely came down to voice our grievances. And so this is also inconsistent and inequitable to people at home who cannot call in. I just have one question, and I hope that you can reflect on it, and I hope something or a list of things come to mind when you think of this question. What have you done in the past year, especially the year of 2020, that you are proud of? And I don't mean spending public money, taxpayer money, on programs that are ineffective and never evaluated. I'm talking about specifically one thing that you've done last year or in your whole career of leadership that you are proud of. Thank you.
I don't have any more speaker cards. Is there anybody in chamber that would like to make a public comment?
Yes, we got one.
Okay.
I did only use one paper to address several of them. Am I going to?
And Brenda Woods.
Yes.
Still got your card.
Thanks. Thank you. So anyways, I'm asking this board to stand beside this community and start pushing back against the government and their tyrannical ruling. If we're going to save our children and their futures, we need to do more. We need to push back on critical race theory. We need to show that school boards don't control our children and they don't own our children. Our children are ours to teach. So start doing your job like you should be doing. I'm asking to push back on cancel culture and canceling gender identity. You are confusing our children and you are making them unwell. You think that we have mental health illness and issues now? Wait, we already have them. Kids are killing themselves. They're confused, and it's our fault because we are not pushing against this, as Mary would put it, BS. I'm not going to use the word because you asked me not to do that, so I won't. And I'm out of breath because I had to run back here. We need to cancel this gender identity stuff. There are boys and there are girls. If boys want to date boys and girls want to date girls, that's fine. I'm sure that we can come to a compromise and accept that, because I will always love my neighbor. But when you talk about 53 genders, that is ridiculous. It does not exist, and this is what's killing our children. That has to stop. We need to save our children. I'm not going to allow this government to do this to us anymore. Families are important. Marriage is important. Our Constitution is important. So I'm asking you to please start writing your congressmen and women to stop this ridiculousness. We shouldn't have to have vaccine passports. I'm not going to get one. Why should a store have my medical records when I can't even get my own mentally ill daughter's records and help her get better? They don't let me talk about any of her stuff. They don't want to know her history or anything. But this government is allowing businesses to look up my name to see if I've had a vaccine. That's bullshit.
Language, please.
And also, it's okay for boys to be masculine. That is your strength. That is what makes you a man. You are to be taught to treat women with respect, to be a good provider, just to be a good person. Your daughter should be taught to be good mothers and to be good caretakers and to be strong and to fight for your children. There's no shame in to be masculine or to be a woman. I'm not going to let the government take my label away as a mother and call me a birthing person. That's not what I am. Even gay couples that want to have children want to be mothers and fathers. They don't want to be non-identified. By continuing this behavior, we are going to be nothing. Our children are going to feel useless, and they're going to be shallow and empty, and they're not going to have anything to dream about. So I'm asking you to stand beside this community and start writing our leaders. So that's about all I have to say today. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, sir. Okay.
Good afternoon, guys. Last week I proposed that we have a month of OMWGHACCP, which would be Old Male, Caucasian, Hardworking American Christian Values, Honest, Conservative, Patriot, Heterosexual Day, or month. The absurdity of honoring anyone simply for their race, religion, sexual preference, and not deeds or achievements is simply pandering to a political division among the people. Why don't we start honoring achievements? The blame game is all I hear. Everything that is wrong in America is someone else's fault. Is personal responsibility ever mentioned? The victim mentality requires nothing from the victims, and while they're victimizing themselves with doing nothing. They attack with zero responsibility and lack of producing anything of value to the community. It's racism, it's white privilege, it's conservative values. They talk of community, but they ignore the majority of the community. Equal rights for everyone should be the goal. Live and let live is not their goal. Anyone who disagrees with their agenda is a racist. We are a constitutional republic where the majority cannot vote out the rights of the individual. The founders said a pure democracy was a lower form of government. Franklin was asked when he came out of the Constitutional Convention what kind of government that they were going to give us. He said a republic if you can keep it.
Thank you. Next speaker in chamber, please.
I put my speaker's request in this box here.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't get it, but you're more than welcome to speak, sir. Please.
Along with some documents. And I see others have done that as well.
Yes, please. Let him have 3 minutes, please.
Okay. Good morning, supervisors.
Good morning.
I'm Steve Boyd. I'm a Shasta County senior citizen. I'm an older American, and I'm a Shasta County elder. And you may have heard other titles for me. I found your Older Americans Month proclamation encouraging in language. On today's consent calendar, your nearly $340,000 agreement with the City of Reading to provide investigative services for crimes against elders and dependent adults tells me that someone understands the issues of elder abuse in this county. I support this item in this agreement. I do not support your Public Works Department's actions that greatly affect the elderly, especially in our county service areas. There are reasons that many older citizens reside in rural county areas. Affordability for those on fixed income, opportunities to grow organic gardens for necessary healthy produce, orchards for fruit canning and freezing, to raise livestock and farm animals are just a few of the reasons. Yes, this year is a severe drought and it will be difficult for us all. However, please avoid the punishment of the 2017 water restrictions that were imposed in one of the wettest years on record that has severe consequences for us older residents. If this was not elderly abuse, it came close. I, for one, have still not recovered from the financial losses created by an unjust and unnecessary public works water restriction ordinance. Elderly residents need help from our elected county representatives that serve as supervisors on this board. Consider reading your Old American Month proclamation from time to time, and consider the vulnerability of the county seniors in your future decisions and actions. With luck, one day you will be a senior citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker in chamber, please.
My name is Mercedes Mutard, District 2. First of all, I would like to thank Supervisor Jones for removing his plexiglass. It was a beautiful symbol of removing restrictions. It was an exciting sight to see a supervisor, drill in hand, removing that barrier. I noticed at the door there is a sign telling us we have to wear a mask or have to have the COVID vaccine, unless we have a health issue that prevents wearing a mask or taking the vaccine. Yeah, I have a health concern. I don't have to wear a mask if I don't want to. In case you forgot, this is America. We are not communists, and I am not taking a vaccine that has no long-term side effect studies. So thank you, Supervisor Jones. Let's take down this wall.
Thank you. Next speaker in chamber, please.
As a veteran, I'm not sure where Mr. Purple Vest Man went. That was disgusting. He hijacked what should have been a very positive, uplifting support for the Korean veterans. Disgusting, that coward left, so I could not confront him eye to eye. My God. And this plexiglass removal, thank you very much. Gee, I sure hope there isn't any retaliation for that in the future. That would sure look like retaliation and other issues. So yeah, let's hope that that matter gets dropped today. Correction real quick on last week. My citizen's arrest of this board majority was dismissed by the Sheriff's Department due to lack of evidence because they did not go after the evidence. They did not do that. The DA's office was not involved officially. I have since last month, I sent a certified complaint to the district attorney to investigate the Brown Act violations that my citizen's arrest was based on. I sent it certified. No response from her 1 month ago. And then I emailed it 2 weeks ago, asked for a response. Still no response. So it sits in her hands. She has specific legal authority to investigate Brown Act violations. It's in the Brown Act. Let's see what happens with that. I have my guesses. This board majority has disgraced the office of sheriff. When a sheriff steps down and the fake news doesn't ask him, what's going on, sheriff? Why would you step down from such a high honorable position? It's because he is not an honorable man. Nobody will ask him the truth. And I'm waiting for him. He's supposed to be on the radio tomorrow. Let's see if he has got the fortitude to say what happened. And you give him a parachute of a position that pays a lot of money. You give him a parachute. Disgusting. Our next sheriff, he's got his work ahead of him. He has to rebuild the trust of the public for that position. The honesty and integrity of that position is now suspect. Mr. McGreeny, you need to go. Have some pride. Have some humility. For gosh sakes. Disgusting. Yeah, this sounds like a la Mr. Modi getting fired from the city of police, chief of police, and then being handed an assistant manager job. Yeah. Same corruption. Disgusting. Another reason for the recall.
Thank you. Is there another speaker in chamber? Do we have any more speakers? This young lady coming? Okay, thank you.
A quick question. I had only filled out one of the papers as to say.
Correct, I've got you.
So it'll be recalled?
Yes, yeah, when we get to the consent count, I'll call you back up.
Hi, I turned in my yellow form, but late. My apologies. Regina Sherritt, District 3. I didn't
Okay,
really have any...
I've got you right here, but I've got you for C4. This is public comment. You can speak now if you want.
Yes. Okay, thank you so
sure.
much. I appreciate it. So I just have a couple of questions. So one of my questions is on, I believe it was C3 and C4. My apologies, I don't have the agenda in front of me. When we're looking at programs, whether they're grant funded or not, are we looking, when it says that it's automatically renewable after 1 or 2 years, I'm not sure why we do that. It seems like it would be beneficial to at least evaluate the effectiveness of such programs before we auto-renew. So perhaps I'm just not privy to the process. But I was just wondering, and I don't expect you to answer that now if you can, or maybe in an email or what have you. So perhaps I'll email the board. That was one question. My other comment was, So today was supposed to be the big day that Gavin Newsom, releases his hold on the state. And so it's kind of been anticlimactic because nothing's really happened. But I just wanted to know where the board stands and what we'll be doing going forward as far as vaccine passports and things like that. So just wanted to get kind of the board's update on those things. And then my last comment would be to, again, just request a public meeting at night in the evening. And I understand it takes a lot of facilitation in order to do that. Especially when we have presenters that come like we did today, that they would have to come at night. And I understand that that's a lot to ask, but it would just be super helpful. I would love to be able to stay for a whole meeting, so I just end up catching the cliff notes at the, or the recording at the end. So I would appreciate your guys' consideration again for an evening meeting, even if it's just once a quarter. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker in chamber, please.
Good morning. I'm Jim Burnett. I'm in District 4. I just have a few action items. One is to terminate the state of emergency that Governor Newsom refuses to terminate and rescind it for Shasta County. Do your citizens a favor and send Governor Newsom a strong message that we're not playing his game anymore, because he set a very unholy precedent. And even if he rescinded it today, the precedent is set for any time anything comes up, they'll just pull a state of emergency, shut everything down, and take away rights for no good reason. Secondly, I agree with the first two speakers this morning that the board should immediately take action, whatever it takes, to eradicate the illegal grows in Shasta County. They are a scourge, and I feel so sorry for the people up there that are being harassed by these people illegally and threatened with bodily harm or death if they get in the way of these illegal grows. So please start action immediately, because we can't be having this lawlessness, because it just keeps creeping closer and closer to Reading, and we already have enough problems here. Third, I echo everybody else that said we need regularly scheduled night meetings. And look at it this way, you'll just get a new cast of characters perhaps. Some of them may even like you more than we do. So maybe that would be a good incentive. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker in chamber, please.
Good morning. Tim Saunders, District 1. Before we get started, I'd like to publicly acknowledge my dad, Robert Saunders, Korean War veteran, my uncle, Richard Ewald, combat veterans, and good men that serve their country. And anyway, well, we need more men like that today, and women that are going to stand up for their freedom and stand up for what's right. So I ask the board yet again to end this ridiculous COVID so-called emergency. I ask again, as a degreed scientist and a former healthcare professional, to fire Karen Randstrom for her ridiculous lockdown advocacy. I ask the board again to stand up to the tyrant, Gavin Newsom. We're free people, and rights are not privileges. Rights are not things that you have to ask for. Rights are rights. So uphold our rights as free people. I'd like to agree with several of the excellent speakers today. We've got a problem with grows. Let's fix it. Hey, how about if we hired a real sheriff for a change? That'd be pretty cool. Okay? And then, yes, everybody, then, okay, we need somebody in that office, but then we need an elected sheriff and a constitutional sheriff, a real sheriff. I'd like to thank some of the board members, particularly these two here, for standing up for our rights. And in case you haven't noticed, I'm wearing a recall shirt. So I guess we won't be seeing you, some of you, after a while. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker in chamber.
Hi,
there's a moment here. My name is Sandy. I wanted to show this advertisement that I saw in the paper. It shows a beautiful young girl, about 13 years old, and it says, make her appointment, make her day. Whether you want them safer at summer concerts or on vacation, everyone you love 12 and older can now get a COVID vaccine. Vaccines prevent nearly 100% hospitalizations and deaths from COVID-19, so you'll feel really good, even if she forgets to say thanks. Okay, so you can find out about this on vaccines.gov. It says we can do this, and up here it says paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Now, I tried to do some research on Gardasil, which was also given to young girls at the puberty age. Many died. They had 3 shots. It was a terrible mess, and it's been hidden and covered up really, really badly. Many, many girls actually died after the 3rd shot. And the mess out there of trying to do research is unbelievable. There's a fact check here, and there's a science over here, and there's this and that, and they're continuously saying that these vaccines are not hurting our children, and I'm sorry. Then I also noticed after this Korean situation, I think this young girl right here is Korean. She definitely is an Asian girl. Very beautiful girl with her hair colored pink hair. But we've got to stop the situation of poisoning our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker in chamber. All right, seeing none, I will close the public comment. We'll move on to the consent calendar.
Chair,
sorry, sir.
if I could have just one quick comment now that public comment is closed. I just want to set the record straight because Mr. Gallardo has said this a number of times, and it's just factually not correct. Mr. Gallardo, I was not fired from the Reading Police Department. I worked there until I retired. During that time, I also served as the assistant city manager for 7 months towards the end of my career. So I wish you would discontinue your false information that you continue to put out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, we will now move to and unless there's any other comments from the board, we're good to move forward. We'll go to the consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They may be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member or staff member may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and consideration. Members of the public may comment on any item on the consent calendar before the board's consideration of the consent calendar. And the same rules apply. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes. I did not receive that any board member wanted to pull anything from the calendar.
But I do have one question. There was a speaker that asked about the financing for C3. If I don't want to pull it, but if we can just answer that question.
Okay.
It would actually be in reference to C3 to C8.
Chair Commenti, if you could give me just...
Sure, take your time. Yeah, this was kind of just came at us. And then I do have some speakers, so before I bring it to the board, I'll ask the speakers to come up and speak if they like.
Chair, Committee, I would add on this particular item, C3, this has been a long-standing program with the Reading Police Department. It started back when I was the police chief, and the county came and asked for an investigator to work on elder independent adult crimes, and has been in place. HSA, I think, believe received funding from the state to pay for the investigative services.
And yes, Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem with the item. The question was asked whether or not it was included in our budget that we just voted on, or whether this is additional money. And I'm reading the report on the fiscal impact, and it appears that it is on part of the budget, but I don't want to overstate.
Supervisor, that's my understanding that it is part of the budget.
Correct.
I have Donnell and Paige on their way here, but to confirm that, but I think that was included in the budget.
Yeah, and it looks like it from the report here, but I just wanted to make sure. Just don't want to ignore the questions that come to us.
Sure.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything else they'd want to pull to discuss? I'm going to just comment that I will recuse myself on C6. I am a board member of One Safe Place. I am not compensated for that, but I think it's probably just best that I not be involved in that decision. So with that, I'm going to ask, I have 2 speaker requests. I will ask Freedom to come back up. And you have 3 minutes.
And I actually can't stay after this, so I'd like to know if I can just kind of, on
Sure.
some of the others that I also had.
Or you have R3 as well?
Yes,
So you want to do them all right now?
if I could.
You certainly may.
Great. So as far as C4, again, what requirements are coming with the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Block Grant? Will it provide inpatient treatment? This is a lot of power to give to one person to be able to apply, approve, accept, sign agreements as they don't exceed $2 million in total funding. Is the reimbursement coming out of the $2 million or on top of the grant? As far as the C11, C12, that's $150,000. Again, living within our budget. We can't keep pushing our budget up. As far as R3, countywide drought emergency, why do you continue to allow heavy drainage downriver, as well as attempting to go after these illegal grows? What are you doing to push SoCal to be more responsible for their own water? What are they doing to be more self-reliant for their own water usage? We seem to have a lot of things put on us to have us stop using so much water when we're all pretty frugal as compared to SoCal. We need to be more able to hold more water and not be sucked dry for special interests. So these are just some of the things that I'd like you to take into account. And thank you for your time. I also would like to just do one more little thing. As far as for doctors are now telling you that the vaccine will reduce your symptoms when you catch it, which makes you less likely to infect someone else. Yet, for the last 12 months, we have been told 0 symptoms, and they called you asymptomatic, infectious, and the reason we needed to be locked down. Can you please tell me what the reasoning behind these contradictive measures would be? Thank you.
Thank you. And then I have Thomas.
Have a blessed day.
Thomas, Shasta County resident. Yeah, I was curious about, I think it's 11, 12?
11, 12 is what you
Yeah.
put down.
I think it's about inspections. I was involved with the inspection service here when I first came up here, and it was pathetic, the service I received. When I was in my working days, I worked for an engineering firm, basically construction, and the city of Mountain View basically had, when I went to the job, they had city, county sign in and then leave. And I always thought that was sort of funny. But from what I hear, they're not responsible for their actions. There's no accountability for their actions. Do you find that strange? I think, again, privatizing things, but again, responsibility. If, nepotism and all that, if you don't have people who cannot be held responsible, I think it starts from the top down myself. But I would like to see people that we hire be responsible for their actions. Now, if they don't know what they're doing, they shouldn't be there, right? But I wouldn't give them a sideways kick. I'd say, we go find something else. Let's get a competent person here. But yeah, our building services, there's anywhere you talk about, there's problems. And this is almost a $1 million or billion, whatever it is. It's a lot of money for no accountability. And I'd like to see some changes in that. Responsibility from the top down. If you're running for office, say, I'll have a night meeting. Ooh. There's a campaign promise that I heard at one time. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Do we have any more speakers in chamber on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board. And for any further discussion, Supervisor Baugh, are you interested in hearing waiting on this until we
Well,
can...
I think the question's been answered.
Oh, okay, very good, very good. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion and a second on the consent calendar.
Move approval.
So I've got a motion by Supervisor Rickard. I have a second by Supervisor Modi. Any other discussion? Supervisor Jones?
Thank you, Chair Clemente. I will be voting no on C8.
Okay, so we have all of that. Supervisor Jones and no on C8. If there's no further discussion.
Chair,
I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly, I'm disappointed. Unfortunately, Freedom had to leave, but perhaps she'll watch the video later. But she talked about the water and not wasting the water that's going. I would just direct her to the Bureau of Reclamation. She perhaps is confused. She thinks Shasta County owns the water at the lake or in the river. That's a federal project. It's federal water controlled by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. If someone wants to challenge their decisions to send water down the river for other needs, such as farmers or fish or whatever, I certainly don't object to that, but I just want to understand that Shasta County does not control the water in Shasta Lake, nor do we control the water that flows down the river. That's at the federal government level. And then just on C11 and 12, I found it interesting that people are saying, we should privatize. These are contracts with private business, so in fact, we are using private businesses to try to keep our costs down. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Okay, so we've got a motion by Supervisor Rickard, a second by Supervisor Modi. We've got C9 as an exclusion for Supervisor Jones.
C8.
I'm sorry, C8, I apologize. And I'm recusing myself on C6. So that being said, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, so we'll move to R2, General Government. We'll take the following actions. Receive a legislative update from the County Executive Officer and consider action on specific legislation related to Shasta County's legislative platform. Mr. Pontus.
Members of the board, I do not have a legislative update this morning, but I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any? Certainly. Supervisor Ball.
Questions were raised about the future of our Sheriff's Department. How is that to be handled, please?
Supervisor Baugh, through the chair, we are putting together a staff recommendation that will go to the board here probably by the end of the week, and that will be very similar to what we saw with the auditor's retirement, in which the board has the authority to fill the position. And so that particular guidance from staff is going to generate a item on the board agenda, at a agenda that we'll be able to look at that and give the board options. We're going to have the same options as we had before with appointment of the auditor, and the board should have a discussion on how they want to proceed forward with public input, and we make a decision and a path forward, and we get that position filled.
Acknowledging that the sheriff's position, for whoever fills that in the future, is actually paid less than a captain on the Reading Police Department and officers within their own unit, the assistant sheriff, the undersheriff, will that also be a topic for discussion?
Supervisor Baugh, through the chair, as we proposed with the auditor position that was in the same boat, we will include a salary resolution to have the board consider adjusting the pay to market value for that position as well.
And then just a question from a legal perspective, what does the law prescribe? May the board send this to an election if it chooses? And you're welcome, Ruben.
That's a layup, right?
Thank you, Supervisor Baugh. In short, and yes, as the board is aware, we've laid out this information before for the auditor controller and the previous appointment that we did for the sheriff. The board does not have the authority to call a special election to fill the position. The requirements that exist are for the board to make an appointment to fill the person who will then serve as sheriff, be the sheriff for the remainder of the elected term. That person then, of course, could, if they want to, sit for election in June of 2022. or anyone else who decides to run for sheriff in June of 2022.
And if this board should refuse to appoint a new sheriff, what would happen?
Well, the law requires the board act within a reasonable period of time. If the position remains vacant, then the undersheriff will continue to, by operation of law, will continue to assume the duties of sheriff. He is not the sheriff. I want to make that very clear. But by law, as the second in command, he does assume the duties of sheriff while that position remains vacant and until such time as it is filled.
And to and through, including an eventual election at the next election cycle?
That is correct, yes. So he would remain, and until the time that there is an appointment by the board. So I do know in the past, a while ago, when Sheriff Pope had retired, that after the election occurred at that point, then the board then appointed the person who won the election to assume the position for the remainder of that term. So like it was in June of whatever it was, and then that person continued to serve that time until they actually began their new term as the elected sheriff in January.
And would his pay be, his or her pay be, I guess it's his in this case, pay be reduced by $27,000 to equal the present salary of the current sheriff?
Whoever is appointed, if there is no pay adjustment.
No, I'm talking about the undersheriff.
No, the undersheriff continues, right now, he continues to serve as the undersheriff. He is not the sheriff, so he continues to receive his pay as the undersheriff.
My reason to clarify all that, and I know we just went through this process, is that there are a lot of questions out there, and I think it's easier just to be transparent and answer the questions, ask the questions, and put them out there. A lot of folks want to see an election happen immediately, and that's not within our ability by law.
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
And I'd like to ask Mr. Pontus if you're prepared, and I'm very confident you are. Can you tell us a little bit about the assistant CEO position and how that was put out to the public?
Supervisor Clemente, I sure can. So, upon arriving and getting my feet planted back in Shasta County, I was looking at our office and looking at how best we can move forward in serving the community. And one thing I realized is that we had some gaps, at least my own perception of some gaps. And one of them was in communication, and that I felt as though we could do a little bit more in that area in the community. The second was being able to have somebody that can help. We have a very strong team, a very strong budget team, a very strong clerk of the board team. But for taking on large initiatives, we were pretty light. And I know Larry Lees did a great job for a long time, and I think that we have some initiatives now before us in building a jail, new facility, new detention facility, and aggressively going after cannabis, illegal grows within our county, and a whole bunch of others. It became apparent to me that we needed a little more bandwidth in the CEO's office, and that's why we added the position of assistant CEO. That position was constructed much like most assistant CEOs within the counties, and or like assistant city managers, very similar in function. This particular one, I had a public safety kind of effort going into the recruitment retention. That position was flown nationwide and was out there. We had thousands of people look at the application materials online. We had, I don't recall the exact number of folks that put in for it, but we had a lot of folks put in for the position. The recruitment was conducted by our support services division, which is the normal process that we use in the county. And we moved forward with interviews, and I can tell you that I was surprised that one of the applicants' name was Eric McGreeny, who I obviously knew well as our current sheriff. And it wasn't very long through that interview process where he started rising to the top. And Mr. McGreeny has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, over 20 years of experience serving North State communities. He encompasses the skills and experience to successfully lead Shasta County alongside the rest of our team and through the Shasta County Board of Supervisors in carrying out projects and initiatives that we've laid out as a priority. Mr. McGreeny is a seasoned administrator and a public safety professional, has dedicated his career to improving public safety in Shasta County. He grew up here locally. He's acutely aware of the challenges we face, and he's got some innovative ideas on how to improve and enhance our public safety efforts. In addition to that, he also wants to improve our relations with the community and our partners. Eric serves on many statewide public safety boards, task forces, and initiatives, and he's held administrative management positions, serving as the undersheriff, captain, lieutenant, and currently as the Shasta County Sheriff Coroner. As your board and the public is aware, he will resign from his position effective June 29th and assume his new position as Assistant CEO effective June 20th, at which time the undersheriff, Jason Barnhart, will serve in the capacity of sheriff for the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. And to Ruben's earlier clarification, he really is the undersheriff who has the authority to continue to operate the department, not serving in the role as the sheriff. The board, as we just discussed, will determine the next steps to fill that vacant position for the remainder of the term. And Mr. McGreany's primary areas of focus will be leading new critical community initiatives that I discussed earlier at our board hearing, including development of a public safety strategic plan, a collaborative effort with public safety partners, Health and Human Services Agency, and the community and the board, and will recommend a new detention mental health facility. He will also be leading a new charge on addressing illegal marijuana grows in Shasta County, and this is partly because it isn't just the sheriff's office who's responsible for that initiative. It really is several departments that we need to pull together and other outside agencies to be able to pull that off. Our district attorney's office, our resource management code enforcement folks, our county counsel's office, our other partners in the community, our regional water quality control board, Fish and Wildlife Service. We're gonna need everyone from all kinds of agencies to help us in that initiative. So, Mr. McGreany will also be leading the county's budget development team and ensuring the funding is available to address the community and the board's priorities. And so that's a little bit about the position, a little bit about why Mr. McGreany was selected. It is hard these days to find a seasoned administrator that has overseen large multi-million-dollar budgets, that understands not only public safety, but also understands the challenges that we face in our community here in Shasta County. And I think Eric will do a great job for us.
Thank you, sir. And I want to just do a follow-up. Whenever you introduce something as innovative as this, because this is a very innovative move that I don't know has taken place anywhere else, rumors will run rampant, and rumors have a tendency to, in certain people's minds, become truth if it's repeated over and over again. But the truth is that this was a position that our current sheriff heard about and applied for, and it was then your determination after reviewing all of the applicants that he was in fact the best candidate to fill this position, and that this position was not a result of anything else that may have occurred in the sheriff's office. Is that a correct statement?
Chair Comanche, that is correct. Absolutely. You know, the position was, we actually interviewed the position in March, and that was the timeline. So, absolutely.
Well, thank you, and I just want to add to this that this was a plan. The specifics to the plan obviously weren't laid out, but when Mr. Pontus was hired back in, I want to say it was January of 2020, because it's a COVID world ago. This kind of strategic thinking was one of the many reasons why we selected Mr. Pontus, because we knew that the social and the criminal issues, the addiction issues that we were facing, the mental health issues needed to be addressed. Unfortunately, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, I think you came on the end of January, went into COVID in the middle of March. So obviously things got delayed and distracted. But I want to make it clear, that's why I'm putting it on the record, that this was a plan that was in play. And part of the reason, and there were many reasons why we hired Mr. Pontus, but part of the reason why we selected Mr. Pontus is because this is a direction that we want to go in. And now, delayed obviously because of what I will call the COVID nightmare, we can now start implementing the strategic approach that we believe will bring the best people to the problem, because that's certainly what our goal is, to find the brightest and the best to address the series of social and criminal issues that we face, and then put together a process and start implementing a strategy that will allow us to positively impact crime in its reduction, and starting with the marijuana grows, and going to the homeless. And I'm not saying that homeless people are criminals. I'm just saying that these are social ills, and sometimes it's criminal behavior that may get them there. It's addiction that may get them there. It's mental health that may get them there. But nevertheless, there is a broad base of social issues that we need to address as a community, and I want to be very emphatic that this is step one in a strategic plan for us to move forward.
Supervisor Committee, may I just?
You certainly may.
Yes, I just want to say that, first of all, I'm a little surprised and taken aback that the community isn't rejoicing more in this new plan and this detention facility that Mr. Pontus has outlined. I'm really excited about working with Eric McGreeny in terms of medically assisted treatment program. For those of you that were paying attention, prior to COVID, we did get that program installed in the jail. He and I attended a conference in Sacramento to try and get Shasta County basically on par with other counties throughout the state. Because if we don't try and treat people with an addiction problem, we're going to continue this revolving door process. And what we are trying to do is reduce recidivism in this county. And I do think that Mr. McGreeny has an understanding about the mental health issues and the addiction problems. It's been quoted to me approximately 80 to 90% of those that are incarcerated have some kind of an addiction problem. And in order to remedy that and to reduce crime and improve public safety, we need to address these issues. And so I am in support of Mr. McGreeny, and he knows that I'm going to be unrelentless when it comes to this subject and try and work with him on this problem. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront, and hopefully people will start getting excited about this new plan, this long-range goal for Shasta County.
Thank you. Any other supervisors like to speak? Go ahead, sir.
So for Mr. Pontes on the budget itself, and I know that we have a tremendously insufficient budget that was hastily adopted to meet a time frame. I don't mean ours, but the state budget. As we wade through that, and it's really more clearly defined, would you have someone research for me, please? In the original draft budget, it included an automatic extension of our current COVID emergency through June of 2021, and it also presented legislation that would bypass our state legislators in terms of the authority of the governor to be able to do practically anything he wanted to related to COVID and the dollars in the budget. I'd like to know if that remains in the budget that's to be adopted permanently. And I don't expect you have the answer today, but I couldn't find out the answer to that question, but I could clearly read it in the original draft.
Supervisor, we'll take a look into that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? Then we'll move to the second part of that. We'll receive supervisors' reports, and we'll start with Supervisor Rickard, Modi, Baugh, Jones, and then myself.
Thank you, Chair Comenti. Attended the Shasta Historical Society meeting, and it was really fun to go to the Bella Vista Pancake Breakfast. They have resumed holding those, and of course right now, as we're approaching a very serious fire season, they need all the support they can get. So it was a really great morning to see so many volunteers show up and the community show up and support them. Also, that was last Saturday, there was, as I was traveling back up to MacArthur, there was kind of a pop-up car show, and it was kind of exciting to see community out and about and mingling with each other and having some fun again. So that was great. I appreciate Ms. McConnell bringing up the gentrification issue and affordable housing in Shasta County, and I don't know if that's something this board wants to look out down the road and agendize, just to have a discussion, a presentation on that. I think it's important that we continue to ensure that people have affordable housing in Shasta County so that they aren't displaced and they don't end up living on the streets. So that's something perhaps we might address at some point down the road. I'm going to continue to discuss and impress upon all of us that we need to deal with the marijuana grows in this county. I continue to get contacts from residents in District 3. I think we're making some progress. I want to thank Mr. Pontus. He's held a meeting that's, I think we're moving in the right direction, so I'm really pleased with that. I also wanted to be sure that everyone's aware that the Bella Vista Water District, they declared a Stage 3 water shortage, and they're adopting mandatory conservation measures. Effective immediately, all municipal customers are asked to conserve at least 20% as compared to the historical use, defined as the 3 years of unconstrained use. So we are in a serious situation with this drought. I hear anecdotally, continually, that we're seeing streams and creeks drying up that normally this time of year are running with plentiful water. And I think this is all tied together with partly, in part, with water being diverted for marijuana production. And I think when we have our marijuana meeting, I think we ought to basically also cover and how the drought is connected with this particular problem. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Modi.
I have nothing to report this week.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Ball.
Thank you, Chair Committee. I'd like to mention that the second week of our Mosquito Serenade is available on Wednesday night in the Anderson River Park. Last week was absolutely packed and an amazing, I would say, reunion for the entire community. Lots of smiles and happy people. 6 p.m. if you want to hear the pre-band, and then 7 o'clock for the headliner on Wednesday evenings. I wanted to thank Mr. Pontes for receiving Pat Blacklock. Pat is the president of our Rural County Association, RCRC. I was able to host him last week in Shasta County, introduce him to some folks, and brought him by the Shasta County CEO's office with the opportunity for them to sit down and talk face-to-face. Nothing better than getting the guy that leads Shasta County and the guy that leads our rural county organization, 37 counties strong, to be able to have just a great face-to-face conversation. I felt like I was listening to a different level of conversation than I've ever heard, and I really appreciate the way that you just went for it and tackled issues, Matt. Very much appreciated. I also wanted to send a thank you, just a shout out to Paul Hellman and Adam. I hope the last name is pronounced Fiesler, but I'm not sure on that. I had hosted a series of meetings for folks that are interested in investing in Shasta County, and I just want to say one particular thing that was amazing from the meetings is I heard we can do this. What does it take to make it happen? How can I help you? And I really appreciated that. I've long advocated that Shasta County and its planning departments host people with the thought that they are clients and they are prospective investors in the county. And that's exactly what I heard in those meetings. And I just want to say thank you. Mr. Minturn was in on one of the meetings too. Thank you, Pat. Heard the same thing from you. So just very, very much appreciative. And that ends my report for this week.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Jones.
Thank you. So I had a meeting with Shasta County chemical people. They are really pushing for a water ordinance similar to what happened in Siskiyou County. I did mention that at the last meeting, and so they would like to see something where we had some teeth with regards to that. I did have a meeting with the local CRPA again. They have a new local chapter president, which is Gary Oxley, and so Gary's going to do a good job. Saturday night, I participated in a nice fundraiser where it was extremely successful, where we had a packed house. So I was glad to see everyone come out. And then I am getting a tremendous amount of response with regards to our resource management division and some problems within the division. So the next meeting, I'm going to put together some points that I would like to address and see if the board would like to move forward with some of these changes that I think that might help. These things have been going on for quite a while, and I think they can be improved. And that's my report.
Thank you, sir. And as for me, which I do on a regular basis, I had a meeting with a city council member down in Anderson, and it started at 7:30, ended about 11. We agree on a lot, we disagree on a lot, but what I really enjoy is the free and open conversation. I think it's very important for a person sitting in any of these seats to understand what it's like for the individuals who are sitting in their respective seats, city councils, because they see we're all on the same team for all intent and purpose, but we see the world from a different perspective, and I think that's a real important. So I try to do that on a regular basis. I haven't done it with, but once with Shasta Lake, but they're on my list. But I just think that's important to do. I also met with a retired individual from RPD. I'm very closely connected. I'm very proud to be proud of our law enforcement in Shasta County, and I like to stay in touch with them as much as I can and find out what's going on, what's impacting them. I also met with a representative of Shasta College because I think education is critically important. And I think education is one of our ways out of economic decline. One of the ways that people can get out of poverty and get to a new life is through increasing their education. And then I met with an individual who represents the Film Council, which, as you may know, Shasta County is quite an attractive area for filmmakers, and several movies have actually been filmed up here. And I think that's something that, in terms of bringing economic prosperity, that we really need to look at is how can we, for want of a better word, really exploit the natural beauty and the awesome people that live here, the great place that we all call home, and try to attract more people, attract more businesses, commercialize it a bit, all in a positive way to bring in tax revenue. And then I just wanted to give you an update, and this is on me as chair. This wall, as it's been known, in front of us, I requested that it be put up. When I took over as chair, I had a plan as to how we were going to roll through the COVID restrictions. I managed to implement that plan. There was a little bit of a hiccup right in the beginning, but we got through that. We brought the seats back in, we brought people back in, and we've done everything that I think is responsible and reasonable. And the reason I say me is I take full responsibility for this. It's not the other board members. It's not Mr. Pontus. It's Joe Comenti who takes responsibility for this. And the reason it has not been taken down yet, at least not all of it, because a portion was taken down this morning, was we are awaiting what Cal OSHA is going to say on, I believe, June 17th. And if that's incorrect, Mr. Cruz will let me know. And whether I agree with the law or disagree with the law, whether I agree with the governor or disagree with the governor, that's the law. He's the governor. I want to do what's in the best interest for the entire community. And to me, not listening to what an agency might say or disregarding what a governor might say, that's not the way I roll. I think throughout this COVID-19, we've navigated very, very well. And obviously there's strong opposition to that, and the people will eventually speak on this, and I'm very comfortable with that. But I just want to make it clear that I'm the one that initiated this. I'm the one that laid out the plan for moving us back out of the COVID restrictions in terms of how we would relate with the governor's office. Again, regardless of how I feel about the governor. And our goal is to have this down at our next meeting. I don't know that will happen, but that is the goal, and I just wanted to make everyone aware that there is a plan, and that is the plan. So with that, I am done. And I will move us into the scheduled hearings. A court challenge to action taken by the Board of Supervisors on any project or decision may be limited to only those issues raised during the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the Board of Supervisors during or prior to the scheduled public hearing. So R3, we're going to take the following actions. We're actually going to, because I'm assuming Mr. Minturn or his staff will be making the presentation, I'm going to ask them to make the presentation. And I do have one speaker card, but if anyone else would like to speak, I will ask them up. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so take it away.
Good morning, Chair Committee,
morning.
Supervisors. My name is Charlene Beard, and I'm an engineer with the Department of Public Works. We're in a drought. In March, the Bureau of Reclamation announced initial water allocations of 55% for M&I contractors and 5% for ag. The Shasta County Water Agency entered into a contract with McConnell to purchase 130 acre-feet of water to augment our supply. Hydrologic conditions are worse than they were in 2015. 600,000 acre-feet of runoff has been lost due to unusually dry, hot weather this spring. In May, it was announced that M&I would be reduced from 55% to 25% of our average usage beginning June 1. In the previous drought, Governor Brown mandated water conservation. Other prior governors created drought banks. At the time, there were more sellers than buyers, but Governor Newsom simply declared a drought emergency. In response to the drought, Public Works is recommending implementation of common sense water conservation measures, such as using an automatic shutoff nozzles on hoses and not watering sidewalks or streets. These are the same conservation measures required of urban water suppliers. Our CSAs are small enough that we don't fall under that umbrella, but in light of our water cutbacks and the drought, it's important that we do what we can to conserve. We've also invited Dr. Larry Ferrero to talk about the agricultural side of things.
Good morning. Just jotted down a couple of notes. My name's Larry Ferrero. I'm the University of California Livestock and Natural Resource Farm Advisor in Shasta County. So just a handful of notes. First one is surface water sources for irrigation water are expected to be limited, especially as summer progresses. On June 11th, Cow Creek USGS stream gauge at Millville noted 3.3 cubic feet per second. The mean for that date of flow was 268 CFS, and the median 169 CFS on the same date based on 71 years of data. But just to give you a quick glance that water flows are down significantly. We expect those supplies to continue to dwindle, and surface water supplies in eastern Shasta County are going to be impacted as well. Water districts have implemented reductions. Supervisor Rickard made this comment on 6/4/21. Bella Vista Water District noted 0% allocation to ag customers. Some ag customers worked with the district to purchase water earlier in the year from an alternative supplier at a significant per acre foot cost. So they looked at it earlier in the year and said, you know what, if we're going to continue, we're going to have to buy water. And I've heard from at least 3 purchasers, and I'm certainly glad I wasn't in the position to have to buy water at the rates they paid. Clear Creek Community Service District notes similar reduction in allocation and a 0% allocation to ag customers. ACID is looking at about a 25% reduction to their customers. Livestock grazing on winter range was impacted significantly by lack of stock water. So there simply wasn't water for livestock to drink on a lot of the ranches scattered across the foothills. And as we ease into the fall, unless we have significant early rain, there's not going to be water for those cattle to go back to for winter pasture as well. So looking, currently U.S. Forest Service summer range in the county faces significant stock water shortage. Folks are hauling water now. And I've talked to a couple that are expected to begin hauling water in July. Forage availability is expected to be limited, with grazers expecting to remove cattle from federal forage early. And that, of course, just plays back into where those livestock going to go. They're going to probably go back to the home ranches for a brief period of time, and then pray for early rain, because most of those cattle will come down to the valley for the winter. And then my fifth thought was that drought has impacted hay supplies. With reduced supplies has increased cost. Lack of forage has reduced in higher than normal sales of breeding cattle. So we're seeing a reduction in retention of females, and we're seeing breeding cattle being liquidated because there simply isn't enough forage to carry them. Cattle market, when I wrote this last week, was currently less than stellar. That's probably more or less true today, although it's brightened up significantly. The video sale last week was significantly better than the previous month. Just glanced at something before I came over here, and feeder cattle are up on the futures market as well. Coupled with increased production costs, though, I think our ranching community is looking at a fairly tough year financially. So there's just a handful of comments that we thought might be of interest to you in a world that maybe not all of you are engaged in every single day. So if you've got some questions, I'll try to address them.
Any questions from the board?
Just a comment. I want to thank Larry for coming today. He and I have already discussed this subject previously, and I can just attest, as a rancher myself, there's a lot of problems that we see ahead in the cattle business. Right now, we are having to feed hay, and Greg Haw was saying the other day that he's been selling oat hay for $200 to $220 a ton. That's just outrageous prices. I mean, Larry, you and I are old enough to remember when it used to sell for $50, $60 a ton. And so this is going to impact the agricultural economy in Shasta County, and it's a real serious problem. Water is a huge issue, and we really need to take this very seriously. And I can't tell you how tough it's going to be. I know a lot of producers are having to feed hay right now, and it's just never been, in my lifetime, we've never dealt with this. And wouldn't you agree that you've never seen anything quite like this?
Well, I'm not very old.
Well, that's true. You're a lot younger than I am.
But this is about as tough as I've seen it.
Yes.
And I think.
And I do remember the days of when we of water banking, and that was what, 78, 9.
The water transfers that I remember were the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, late 80s.
And I remember, growing up in Trinity County in the mid 70s, that the Trinity Lake bottom was a great place to ride your dirt bike.
But it is not unprecedented times, but it's tough times, and it's going to really impact the cattle industry for a lot of us.
No, and that's a lot of what we grow here.
And a lot of people don't understand that a year like this impacts fertility, it impacts gain, it impacts the bottom line for the cattlemen, and it's tough times ahead of us. So thank you, Larry.
Any questions, you can get hold of me at the office, or take care.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning again. In light of the reduced precipitation, we're at 46% of average for this time of year, and the loss of runoff, the Department of Public Works is requesting that the board adopt a resolution which declares a countywide drought emergency and waive the reading of, and enact an urgency ordinance of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Shasta declaring a water shortage emergency and a necessity for a water conservation program, adopting a water conservation program, and finding that actions are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. County Council has advised that we make the following changes to the proposed ordinance. Public Works concurs. I'm going to read it into the record, and afterwards I'll be happy to answer any questions. In regards to Section 8, access to customer premises and compliance, the current version, which they've requested we delete, reads, A customer receiving water service from a county service area shall provide the Department of Public Works employees and/or contractors access to and use of the premises where water service is received as may be required by the county's employees or contractors to determine whether there is any violation of the provisions of Section 2 or to abate any violation thereof. If the customer refuses to allow such access, the county may seek authorization from any court of competent jurisdiction for such access and abatement. B, compliance with provisions of this article shall be a condition of the customer receiving or continuing to receive county service area water service. We propose that we delete that and replace it with consent of the owner and tenant, if any, county employees shall have unrestricted access at all reasonable hours to premises supplied with water or sewage service to determine whether county rules and regulations regarding these services are being observed. Only duly authorized employees or agents of the county may connect or disconnect water service at any parcel or open, close, or otherwise adjust any regulating device in a water system. Additionally, Section 11, California Environmental Quality Act, it's been requested that we delete, and we propose that we delete. This ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, Public Resources Code, Section 21,000, and sequential. And we replace that text with, this ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, Public Resources Code, Section 21,000, and sequential, because it can be seen with certainty that there is no possibility that it will have a significant effect on the environment, as it includes regulations to protect water resources and the ability to provide water resources. Also, it consists of regulations and restrictions on activities to ensure the maintenance, restoration, or enhancement of a natural resource pursuant to CEQA Guideline 51501, existing facilities, 15305, minor alterations on land use limitations, 13507, actions for protection of natural resources, and 15308, actions for protection of environment. And there are no unusual circumstances under CEQA Guideline 15300.2c. Each exemption stands as a separate and independent basis for determining that this ordinance is not subject to CEQA. Are there any questions?
Questions from the board? Supervisor Jones?
Yeah, Chair Clemente, could you describe any penalties or what is the process with this declaration as far as the penalty phase? How is that going to work, and how is that going to affect customers if they use more than what is allocated?
So let me start by saying that this isn't about water allocations. So outdoor water conservation, what we are proposing is that no person shall use or cause to be used in any county service area water for outdoor landscapes during and up to 48 hours after the day of immeasurable rainfall. No person shall use or cause to be used in any county service area water for outdoor landscape in a manner that causes runoff such that water flows into adjacent property, non-irrigated areas, private and public walkways, roadways, parking lots, or structures. No person shall use or cause to be used any water to wash a motor vehicle except where the hose is fitted with a shutoff nozzle or device attached to it that causes it to cease dispensing water immediately when not in use. No person shall use or cause to be used water to wash driveways and sidewalks. No person shall use or cause to be used water for a fountain or other decorative feature except while the water is part of a recirculating system. So there are no limits to water allocations. And then in regards to your question, penalties for violation are described in Section 6. The first one is simply warning. You're violating our new ordinance. And it will be written notice describing the violation and the penalties for subsequent violation. And then a second violation within 1 year is $25. A third violation would be $100. Fourth would be $500.
All right, thank you.
Other questions from the board before I open public comment?
I have a quick question. Mr. Minturn purchased, he was given authority to purchase some water from McConnell. Could you, for at least for Jones Valley, is my concern primarily, could you explain how that's going to be helpful during this whole drought situation?
Absolutely. So Jones Valley has their own water right. Their water right has a gap during the summer, and this gap is subject to Term 91. During that gap, they're supplied water through the Shasta County Water Agency, and our water allocation has been cut to 25% of normal, which means that other 75% has to be covered from somewhere else. In addition to that 75%, Term 91, what that says is if there's not enough water downstream for people with senior water rights, you have to cease diverting. Well, they've enacted Term 91. They said instead of just your usual 2 months, we're going to start, I believe it was April 29th, you're not allowed to divert under your own water right. So during that time, the Shasta County Water Agency also has to backfill Jones Valley. And so the McConnell water is being used to backfill the Jones Valley water right.
So in other words, if we hadn't purchased that water, it would be a much more severe situation for Jones Valley.
Yes.
So anyway, thank you.
Chair, if I could just ask, doesn't that also apply to Cragview and Castella?
Yes, mostly. Cragview is also subject to Term 91. Castella has a gap, but it's a set gap during the summer that the water agency fills. They are not subject to Term 91.
But there is some portion that they are as well?
Absolutely.
So they're going to be facing critical shortages?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing this board chose to buy McConnell water for those two districts as well.
Yes.
Other comments?
Yeah, I had some more comments with, and I didn't support that agreement with McConnell Foundation at $250 an acre foot. To me, that's taking advantage of people in time of a crisis. It's not that I didn't want the water. Did we ask them to keep the cost low, that they did not have to charge the 250, but did we attempt at all to get that water at the normal, reasonable price to protect our residents during a time of crisis?
Yes, we did. During a drought, water always goes up in price. If you don't have a long-term agreement, for example, some people have long-term agreements with ACID to keep it at a low rate, but you pay extra every year for that. Because we only use it in a drought, that water does go up in price. However, we do get one of the best rates in the county.
But did we ask them for a reduced price?
Yes.
And what was their comment?
This is the price that we have.
Thank you.
May I add to that also? I'm familiar. I actually own water shares in a canal district in Kings County and followed the water market for years, and it does fluctuate tremendously based on precipitation and supply and demand. And $250 is an extremely, very, very conservative price. I'm very familiar with water selling for $1,000 per acre foot, $1,250 per acre foot. So I consider it basically a bargain. And I think we're fortunate that we had it. And I'm very familiar with what water sells for up and down this state. So it was a good deal.
And I would add, they've kept the same price for almost 10 years now at the McConnell Foundation, have not raised their price. And I know even in talking with Clear Creek, it cost them well over $300 an acre foot just to pump their wells. So for them, it was a better price to buy the water than try to pump their water from the ground. So despite Mr. Jones's comments, I think McConnell has been very reasonable. They have a nonprofit side to their organization, and they also have a side that has to make money to support their philanthropic projects. And so I think it's unfair to characterize them as something other than that.
Well, to Mr. Modi, I guess if you want to tell everybody in the Mountain Gate Community Service District that they're paying more for their water, you might want to explain that to them, because I've tried and they're not. The fact of the matter here is McConnell did not need to charge that amount of money during a crisis. Sure, they can. Sure, they can go with the city of Reading and sell it to Plumas County for $500 an acre foot, which they've done before. But in a crisis, we're supposed to help our neighbors and keep that cost down. And that's my issue with this.
Well, and they are, by keep not charging us more, as they could easily charge $500, $800, $900 an acre foot. They have not done that. And quite frankly, Mountain Gate is its own separate district. It's not under the jurisdiction of the county, and they need to work to take care of themselves.
Okay, is there any other conversation or discussion before I open public comment? Seeing none, Mr. Boyd, would you like to speak again, sir? Yes. Well, we would welcome you to do that. And then, Mr. Vincent, you'll be next. And those are the only two cards I have, so if anyone else wants to speak, please be prepared. And once Mr. Vincent is gone, you can come in, please.
And Chair Committee, may I ask that you formally open the...
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I will formally open the public hearing.
Okay, again, greetings, Supervisor. And I would like to remind you that the water that was secured by the Elk Trail Water Association from ACID, the 140 acre feet, came with a limited reduction of 25%. And this board at the time refused that water, which is jumping up and biting us. I'm Steve Boyd, CSA 6 Jones Valley Water ratepayer. Unlike the 2017 emergency water use restriction imposed needlessly by your county works director, this year there is a drought emergency, and everybody understands that. Water conservation is a reasonable mandate to the dry months ahead. What is not reasonable in your order that prohibits practices that waste potable water is the failure to recognize the million upon millions in gallons of water losses created by Public Works mismanagement of the county service areas. I have given you a copy of my presentation to this board during April of 2015. In my presentation, I identified that the 15,200,000 gallons of water loss average 91 gallons per day for each CSA 6 connection. This amount of lost water paid for by ratepayers was more than the amount of some customers' water put to beneficial use through their meters. In my presentation, I also identified available state water grants available at the time to address the CSA 6 issues. These grant documents were sent to me by the Water Board's Chief Deputy Director, a lady that I worked for during my Cal EPA employment. Your Public Works Director disputed my presentation and grant funding available to replace old water meters and locate water losses. It's now been 6 years of water losses that has turned into massive amounts of wasted water that continue today. In the text of today's if the text of today's ordinance can be trusted, there should be no or few objections. Due to the time limit of my ordinance questions, I'm going to only ask about Section 2. Section 6 identifies the penalties for violation of any of the provisions of Section 2. There are no provisions included in Section 2 in what I've seen. Section 8 requires Public Works access to premises to look for violations of any of the provisions in Section 2. Where are the Sections 2 provisions? Can we be assured that none exist? Finally, with Shasta Lake likely to reach record lows, what are the plans for pumping and treating CSA 6 water as the pumps become near the lake's surface? The last report I heard was that only one of the 3 pumps was working correctly and there was water filter problems. The need for water conservation is not the only issue here today, Supervisors, and I hope that they're going to be remedied. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vincent, you're up.
Okay, let's get this started. Some of the questions were answered through the Department of Public Works presentation. My item is R3, drought emergency. Okay, on April 29th, 2021, they contracted 130 acre feet from the McConnell Foundation. Is that enough water for the CSAs, the number of CSAs that we're looking for? I did find out how much it costs, again, $250 an acre foot. But what about the 500 acre feet that was recently given to the Shasta CSD after the Keswick burned? And so there's a lot of water there that I don't really know where it's going, and it hasn't really been pointed out clearly. We had a meeting with the CEO, Matthew Pontus, Department of Public Works, Patrick Minter, and myself, and 2 others representing Jones Valley. It was about a 2.5-hour meeting. Our basic complaints for me were the same. They were about being charged exorbitant fees without accountability. Everything, again, we said was backed up with 2 grand jury reports, several state water control board reports, attorney's letter, and my main thing here is flawed PACE engineering, which was one of the biggest contributors to our deficit. Now, looking back, I see on June 8th, 2021's agenda, the Board of Supervisors awarded PACE Engineering $260,000 contract over 5 years for Jones Valley water system improvements. That's ratepayers' money. It states that the Director of Public Works can sign amendments as he sees fit. Now, it's well known that I'd like to see Jones Valley turn into its own CSD or be annexed to Mountain Gate CSD. This ties us up. If this is going to be in place for 5 years, so that's and there's no mention. Then there was no mention of that contract at our CEO's meeting. The meeting we had was on May 14th. This contract was signed on May 13th, and there was no mention by the Director of Public Works or the CEO. And I spoke to him before our meeting today. He said he didn't even know about it. So that's a little bit of the smoke and mirror thing. I kind of felt like it was hiding something from us. We could have brought it up and gave us a little bit of a heads up on this. Department of Public Works fingerprints are all over our money. The COVID restrictions are being lifted. Jones Valley wants its meeting with the Department of Public Works with an explanation of the financials for the past 18 months. We want an evening meeting, 6 o'clock or so. The painting of the tank on Green Mountain Trail, it's a black tank. It needs to be painted. That was agreed to be put on our agenda for our July meeting, and we want to make sure that gets on there. That's going to eliminate the 100-degree water that the ratepayers are drinking in the summer months, and that's pretty awful. One of the things said at the CEO's meeting was it might be a good idea for Matthew Pontus to give a statement under oath now that he's being made aware of some of the Department of Public Works and the Board of Supervisors generating money, and that's in order to protect himself. So Jones Valley wants to work with the county, but I felt like it was a little bit raw to have a $260,000 contract signed without informing us. You guys have a good one.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers in chamber?
I'm glad I stayed. We just recently moved out to Palisadro, and we have 10 acres, and we had to buy water. And I'm just sitting here thinking about the people that have spoken today about illegal grows and how they are, trucking in water and stealing from creeks. And yet this, the county is going to violate or have the citizens of Shasta County pay violation fees that are going to be just exponential in nature. So I just hope, I don't understand all the water shenanigans that have been going on, but I would hope that you guys would do the right thing by your citizens and your constituents, and go after the people that are taking water illegally before you penalize the citizens of Shasta County. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers in chamber that would like to speak on this? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing, and I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Do we have any board members that would like to?
Sure, I'll speak to start with. That Mr. Vincent, you've been here many times. You bring a lot of the same issues. We answer them. You don't like the answers. I get it. Just to talk initially about the 500 acre feet that you indicated that belonged to Keswick, that was under the purview of the water agency. And part of that water was used to augment Jones Valley. It's still available. It's still being used. The question, what I think you're not understanding, it doesn't matter if it was 500 or 5,000 acre feet. Your allotment doesn't change, because as far as the Bureau does, and when they do cutbacks, they look at your historical, 3-year historical average, and based on that, that's the cut that they make. So if your historical average is 200 acre feet and they're going to cut it by 50%, now it's 100. Doesn't matter if we have 1,000 feet under contract, because they're telling us 1,000 acre feet of water is not available. It's just whatever you're historically used, and then it's cut. And that's the same for everybody. So you keep bringing up that issue, but it's just not really, doesn't, quote, hold water. You mentioned about the deal, I'm sorry, you didn't. Mr. Boyd mentioned about the ACID deal. What you didn't mention, Mr. Boyd, was that was a deal that costs more water, costs more per acre to buy than the Keswick water, which was a better deal for you. Plus, it was a use it or lose it deal. So whether you took all the water that year or not, you were going to pay for all of it. So in the end, it was going to cost you a lot more. And as far as that quote, only subject to a 25% cutback, that might be the deal that ACID wanted to make, but quite frankly, it doesn't matter. It matters what the Bureau of Reclamation sets up. They control the water in Shasta Dam. They control the water that comes down the river. The county doesn't get to tell them what to do with that. The issue about the painting of the tank, again, we've talked about many times. It was a choice given to the people who lived next to the tank to what color they wanted. They picked a color, the county painted it. If that's not satisfactory and something wants to be changed, obviously the ratepayers can do that. And that's the one thing I think needs to come out. And Mr. Boyd talked about the leaks. There was a lot of leak detection work done out there. And I also remember we did a survey with your ratepayers to see if they'd be willing to pay either $5 or $10 or $15 extra a month to fix some of the problems. They didn't want to pay that. And the county's not going to pay for it because it's the ratepayers' responsibility, and you have to cover all of your costs. And no, yeah. Well, I remember because we actually when we did one of our notices, we actually put a little thing in there and asked if you wanted to, would you be willing to pay an additional $5 or $10 or $15? And the response was no. So it keeps coming up, these issues. I know you've been at odds with the county. You mentioned that, you'd like to be your own CSD or join someone else. Quite frankly, I think that would be great. I would support that 100% if you ever were able to find somebody to take you on or to become your own independent thing. But we have tried to work very hard to do what we can. As you guys even asked for your own, you didn't want the county's rate structure to be put in place, so you asked for your own separate independent rate review. They came in and said, you know what, county, you're wrong. You should double what you're charging. And all of a sudden it was like, whoa, wait a minute. So because we weren't charging enough to cover all the costs and do all the things that you want to do because we were trying to keep the rates lower. So it's sort of, you kind of want to have your cake and eat it too. You're going to have to choose one way or the other. And I know that you don't like what I'm saying. I'm just telling you that we've had this discussion many times, and you're saying you're complaining about the fees that the PACE is charging to do some work. Yet Mr. Boyd is saying he wants more work to be. He wants more checking done. He wants the leaks fixed. Well, to do that, you've got to pay someone to come and do the surveys and look at what's out there and then try to make a plan. So we go through this every time. I get it. And then to the actual talking about some of the things that were brought up about the fees that people use to, Ms. Baird, you read it. It was pretty easy going. Starts with a verbal warning, a follow-up with a letter. I think the third time was a $25 fee, try to get people's attention. We've always tried to get people to be in compliance. It's collecting $500 from anybody on a fine and stuff is not going to solve the water problem. The water problem has to come from the customers. They have to work. And it's just not Jones Valley. It's everywhere. I mean, you already heard about Bella Vista. Been mentioned about Mountain Gate, Castella, Cragview, Centerville, Clear Creek. All of them are making cuts. I just got my notice the other day as well. So it's the same thing we're all going to face. We're all in the same boat. Does it mean we shouldn't go after the marijuana people? Absolutely we should, and we're going to try to work on that. But that's not going to fix the water shortage. I mean, it's still going to be based on what the drought conditions are and then what the cutbacks are. The Bureau doesn't look at what the marijuana people do. When they figure out cutbacks, they just do it based on what's out there. They base it on snowpack, rainfall, the reservoirs. They don't go out and try to measure what every bit of water that everybody's using. So it's just kind of a little bit of it's an issue, but it's not the issue as far as the water shortage. It's a drought, and hopefully it doesn't get worse next year.
Supervisor Ball.
Thank you, Chair Committee. So a couple questions were asked, if we could address those. Is this going to supply enough water?
We do have enough water to supply our CSAs. If they use the same amount as they did last year. If there's a large increase in water usage, it's going to be tough.
So I'm looking at this, and I see the potential that folks might perceive that there's a desire to penalize people and to collect exorbitant fines, but that's not really what it says. What it says is that we're trying not to do that, and we're just looking for voluntary compliance. This is not aimed at Jones Valley, and in fact, except for Mr. Non-Rural. It affects the remaining 4 supervisors districts here. Is any of this part, you might have a little piece of it.
Yeah, very
little bite of it, but it's aimed countywide at the districts that the county manages, so there's not a directional aim or a purpose to pound down on anybody in the county. This is affecting all of us because all of us are short of water, even in the city of Anderson, even though we do not use any water from those sources. We draw everything through a pump. We are still subject to the same restrictions that have been implemented statewide. So I'm sure the city of Anderson has that on their agenda this evening as well because of the proclamation of a statewide water emergency. I also don't want to give up my water. So I think we're all in the same.
You want to say boat, don't you?
Boat, I do, literally, but I was trying not to make the pun out of it. So the second thought, if we could just, maybe Mr. Minturn, this is your area, but maybe you have the answer. On the engineering contract with Jones Valley, what is the purpose of the contract? What do we hope to gain from that?
Do I answer? My understanding, Jones Valley does have a water loss problem. There's been a grant project in process for several years now. We've done most of the planning, and I believe this is the actual final design. So we've hired Pace to do the final design for our meter replacement and repairing some certain leaks.
So this creates a shelf-ready project, and there is a potential for a tremendous amount of infrastructure funds, grant monies, and so forth coming down.
Yes.
Does this put us in the running to be able to get those dollars if they're available?
Absolutely.
Actually, we have them.
We have the money.
So you have the
Not
money.
Next year, will be provided next year.
So it's already grant funded, subject to the engineering. So it's not an out there contract that was just, purposely trying to hurt the ratepayers in Jones Valley. This is the means to an end.
Correct.
So when would this? We already are guaranteed the money. We just have to prove this. Is there any other off ramp that?
This is actually grant funded, the PACE project, and then also the construction is a separate grant. And the State Water Resources Control Board has notified us that the grant won't be available until next year, till 2022.
Okay,
But they have promised us the grant, and so we're hiring PACE, and there's going to be some money expended this year as they prepare for it. And so, per the board report, that it was all enacted in public session.
Right, I remember.
There will be some money expended, and Jones Valley will briefly go negative, but they will be reimbursed when the final grant comes through next year. And we'll be ready to jump on it as soon as the grant money is turned on. We'll go to construction.
And so I just want to hear those words out of your mouth one more time. The PACE contract is grant funded as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, and I don't know, Charlene, if you want to answer. Are you seeing any groundwater issues in terms of wells dropping, and are people wells going dry, or anything like that? Any problems? And maybe Larry Ferrero could even answer this too. I'm curious to know if we're starting to see any indications of problems with that.
Not that I'm aware of, but that's not something that gets reported to Public Works.
Okay.
But
I know there are problems south of us.
But I will say that our last groundwater sustainability agency meeting, we were looking at the groundwater in the Reading and Enterprise basins, and they're great.
They're good.
They're
Okay.
doing very good.
That's all I wanted to hear. Okay, good.
Just adding into that, and correct me if I'm not remembering correctly, even on the very worst droughts we've gone to since my service on the board, the whole basin has been affected, almost a negligible impact on the water basin beneath us. In the intermountain regions where people are relying on wells and fractured rock, there have been effects and shifts in those water supplies, but having nothing to do with the basin and the groundwater that we're taking water from down here.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's true. During the 14-15 drought, when some of the valleys, counties like Colusa and Glenn were having some serious water droppage for their groundwater, ours was it was measurable, but not very much, maybe a few feet that quickly came back when the rains came back.
Even when the well, in our largest well in Shasta County that was at the mill in South County, drawing 1 million gallons a day, I believe, if that's the right figure, the potential of doing that. The Kona Depression extended very limited extension, and the moment they shut that thing off, it rose back up. And literally, and that well's not running right now. It was almost a zero impact, almost immeasurable impact to the basin. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, is that...
I believe that's correct.
Is that the largest well still in Shasta County? But not in operation? Okay, thank you.
You know, and I also will add about some of the penalties there. I heard over the weekend that Shasta Community CSD was putting into place that if people did not adhere to their allotments, and not just going over, but just at allotments, that after the second month, they may actually disconnect people's water. So if people think that a warning letter or a $25 fine is overstepping, just think about being a Shasta CSD where they're actually talking about disconnecting your water if you continue to abuse conservation. Now, I don't know if legally they can do that. That was my first question. But that's what they were sort of throwing out there to their customers because they're very, very concerned about the shortage of water.
Any other discussion? Then I have a couple of things I would just like to bring up.
Before we move on, Joe, can I just get some last-minute clarification on a couple things? I think I was totally misunderstood.
Anyone have an opposition to giving some clarity to that? And you can step up here.
I have no problem with it.
Okay. And legal's not telling me I can't, so.
You're the chair. You can do it.
Okay, I'm the chair. I can do it. Speak, sir.
My issue with Pace Engineering and these absorbent fees, yes, we had RCAC come in, tell us, yeah, you need to pay double to build up your reserve fundings and all the different attributes that go with it. So great, all right, we're on board. I knew it was going to be expensive. I got the community out there at the fire hall. They voted it in. Then we get charged with the engineering problems, the lack of power that went back and forth with PG&E. That was Pace Engineering's design. It cost us over $200,000, went against the ratepayers for those pumps. The booster pump at the end of my road, $380,000. It was a mistake from the volume tank up there. There should have been a small pump there, and they put this big giant box out in front of my house. No problem, it doesn't bother me that much. The black tank. Well, the black tank was decided on because the people didn't want something bright in their front. Those people are gone now. They sold their houses. Both of them sold their houses after the first summer. And they sold their houses in the wintertime, in the springtime before the temperature went up. So those are some of the major issues. We were in debt 6 months ago over $200,000 because, and the water usage is down, and because of the fees or whatever. But we now, when I spoke with Pat back on May 14th, we were up like 90 grand or something like that. We're all for finishing up. The preliminary engineering report's been done. We're all for finishing up what's needed to get this grant funding. I know that it's in place. It's been put back a year because of COVID, not because of anything else. But I just questioned Pace Engineering on this thing. That was my main point. They had charged us. They had made mistakes. We ate it. We bit the bullet on it. And it was just a little scary that wasn't brought up in our meeting. And that's my smoke and mirrors thing you always run back to. That's all I had to say on that one.
Well, thank you, Roy.
Thank you, sir. Okay, if there's no other discussion, I have a couple of things I want to bring up. On Section 8, when we did the revised version, I have a problem when we say that a county employee has unrestricted access. I'm one of those people, and maybe I'm out of line here, but I'm one of those people that believes there has to be some kind of reasonable suspicion. I like to go as high as probable cause, things from my law enforcement days. I really am concerned when we just say that. I mean, beyond the normal coming in and checking a meter or whatever someone might do, like in a residential neighborhood, and even then there's very limited access to the property. I have a concern without putting some qualification in as to why. I appreciate it has to happen at a reasonable time. And I'm not quite sure what the qualification is. Maybe it's there are people who are filing complaints. But I would just like to see something in that verbiage that basically says we have a reason to be here, that we're not arbitrarily coming on to your property. Because as a landowner, I think we all feel like we want to know that there's some safeguards there. So that's a concern I have. And then the other thing I have is, and I appreciate that the fines are not, they're not outlandish, and this is probably the wishful thinker in me. I'm hoping that we all realize we're in a crisis. We couldn't come together on COVID, quite apparently, but I'm hoping that we can. This is pretty substantial, substantive. You can see it, you can feel it, it's there. That maybe we can all just comply because we're quality human beings who want to support one another and really like where we live and like the people with whom we live and share this community. So, my thoughts are, again, I know that the money's not really designed to be a revenue and it's designed to kind of have some teeth, but I'd like to see something like you get 3 warnings. Again, we're dealing with intelligent, logical people, at least that's our hope. That we give them 3 warnings on the fourth time, then we start with the fines, and they start at $25 and go up from there. The other concern I have is, again, we've gone through a very difficult year and a half that had financial implications, and again, none of these fines are exorbitant, but a fine is a fine, and to some people, $25 is a lot of money, and I respect that. So that's the other thing I'd like to think about is, how we can lay out the schedule. I agree that we have a crisis. I agree that we have to do this. I would just like to, I'm concerned about the verbiage that I mentioned, and then I'd like to be able to discuss at least at what point we implement an actual dollar amount.
Chair Commander.
Sir.
Because you were running the meeting, you maybe didn't get a chance. We got this revised thing, and in the draft, a proposed revised version, it says, with consent of the owner and tenant, if any, then the county employees can have unrestricted access. So
yeah, and
I thought consent of the owner is about as gracious as you can get.
Yeah, and yes, I'm still a little concerned about, because people could say, well, they came to my door. What was I supposed to do? I would just like to see. So yes, I do have this. Okay. I'd like to see a little bit of reasonable suspicion. I'd like to see, I'd give you the consent if you can show me that somebody said I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing. That was kind of the road I was going down.
So just in terms of verbiage, I don't think it would change a thing, but it would sound less harsh, which is what you're aiming at. It does sound pretty harsh, like somebody can just demand and walk in my house without reason. It could be easily just to say, shall have reasonable access with cause at all reasonable hours.
I would be more comfortable with that.
It doesn't really change the access.
No, but it
doesn't sound as.
And again, maybe I'm just overreacting to this, but the thought of the water police coming to your door, I just don't think people, need to deal with that. So any way we can soften it up, I think that, and I think it speaks more loudly to the direction that certainly this board is interested in taking, and that is one of willing compliance and not, to be onerous in any way in a very uncomfortable situation following about 16 months of a very uncomfortable situation. So I just want to be really cognizant of that.
And then I'll ask the question about your desire to add another layer to getting to the eventual charge. Can you outline those again for us, and in what time frame? I think that might be a consideration, because wouldn't they come on the basis of the monthly reading, or how does that work?
So again, these aren't related to water usage.
Right,
as
right,
far
no,
as
I know that,
allocations.
but can you just tell us the order of the fines and over what time frame it
The
would
first
take to get
violation
there?
during any 12-month period, no penalty shall be imposed, but a written notice describing the violation and the penalties for subsequent violations shall be issued to the owner and occupant. Second violation, during any 12-month period, a written notice describing the violation and a $25 fine. The third during...
So that's what I want to get to. So are those, did that just describe a 2-month period?
So not necessarily. Again, for example, if you're watering the sidewalk, or the one time that I actually became aware of this being imposed during the last time, there were no fines, but what happened was somebody was washing the driveway, and our CSA guy saw him and walked up and said, hey, we passed an ordinance, you're not allowed to do that anymore, we're trying to conserve water.
And so that cured it?
Right.
Okay.
Do you guys, I mean, obviously that particular time there was a employee out there, but do you get complaints from neighbors? Is that where some of this comes from or what?
Rarely.
Yeah. In the previous time, how many times did we send out letters or talk to people? Have any idea?
I don't know how many, like I said, no fines were issued previously, but these were mandated by Governor Brown during the last drought. They're very common sense measures as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but I'm just, as to Supervisor's point is, how often does it come up for us to make notification or send a warning or something?
I personally did not send out any.
Yeah, I'm thinking it doesn't happen very often.
No.
I'm guessing that these are set up, and that's kind of the question I think Supervisor Ball is getting to. These are set up when, you know, it's somebody is doing something egregious, and either we see it or the neighbors call because, you know, they're watering their lawn, but quite frankly, their sprinklers are spraying out in the street, and they just keep doing it and don't fix it, or they're letting the hose run forever and the water's running down the street, or they have a leak and they don't want to fix it or something. I'm just not quite sure this is quite as big a deal as it's being made out to be.
So just in my response to your answers is I don't have a problem with the way that part is worded. Right now, based on the prior history, it looks like we didn't actually find anybody. So
Okay.
that kind of makes sense. It's an attempt to just get voluntary compliance.
Correct.
And for the record, I'm very comfortable with the evaluations of supervisors who've dealt with this a lot more closely than I have. I think we all agree we just want to protect the ratepayer as best we can.
Are we required to put something in place?
We're not required this time to put something in place.
Okay. Not yet, anyway.
Correct.
All right, so I'll bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of this board in reference to the ordinance in front of us?
And Chair Commenti, if I
Go
may
ahead, sir.
briefly,
Please.
to follow up on the request that was made concerning the revision to Section 8 to change the word unrestricted to reasonable, that is certainly acceptable from a legal standpoint if that is the direction of the board. And as Supervisor Modi indicated, the primary reason for the rewrite was to emphasize that the access would be with the consent of the landowners and or the tenants. Also, in reviewing the ordinance and based upon the comments that were made, there are a few very minor cross-references in sections that need to be corrected, and I'll go over those very quickly. There was a reference under subdivision A of Section 6, which referred to Section 2. Yes, that should instead be Section 5, which is where the violations are listed. Also under subdivision F of Section 6, it refers to a right to appeal pursuant to Section 4. That should be Section 7. And then also under Section 7, subdivision A, there's a reference to notice of violations issued under Section 3. That instead should be Section 6. So I apologize for the misreferences, but that's just to be provided for complete clarity moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, I'll bring it back to the.
Yeah. So I'll make a motion. I'm going to make the motion to leave the part with the unrestricted access, only because I think that's easily definable, where reasonable gets into kind of a debate. I still like the part where it has with consent from the owner, so I think that's clarified. So I'm going to make a motion to approve staff's recommendations with the clarification changes that Mr. Cruz just pointed out to us.
We have a motion from Supervisor Modi. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Supervisor Rickard. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just add one thing. I think the point from the county, at least I hope it is that we're looking for compliance, not for necessary enforcement, not to do the gotcha or anything. I hope people just understand that we're just going to try to gently remind them that if they're violating something by running the water, to try to come into compliance. That's the whole point. That's what every district is going to do. So.
And I just want go ahead.
Dealing with a very rural drought, this appears to me to be the least restrictive path forward.
Okay, and I just want to say, after hearing the conversation with the board members, and I appreciate it. I appreciate your wisdom and experience in these things, and I'm fine with it going with unrestricted. I think I made a point of what I was trying to do, and you guys were very helpful in clarifying that. So thank you. So we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, then I'll ask for a vote, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
We have one opposed, so it passes 4-1. Okay, so we're going to move into closed session. The R4 has been removed, conference with legal counsel for existing litigation. So before we move into closed session, I will ask anyone if, in the public, if they would like to comment on the remaining R5, which is conference with labor negotiator. Okay, seeing none, then we'll recess to closed session to discuss the following one item, and I would like to just take a 5-minute recess so that we can do the things that we do. Sure. Correct. Correct. Given that, this meeting is adjourned.